Tous les fleuves commencent à la source. En aval, les rapides. Une descente raide, chutant de plus de 40 mètres avant de remonter sur Raidillon. En dessous, eau rouge. Une rivière calme s'y écoule. C'est aussi un virage célèbre et redouté par tous. Le circuit a évolué mais pas ce virage. Une capsule temporelle de ce que la course était auparavant. Le conduire, une fois, est intimidant. Le faire tour après tour sans erreur, presque impossible. Le fleuve s'écoule dessous, mais sa destination est aussi sa source. Du moins, à Spa-Francorchamps.
The Radenso Sports Car Challenge has brought us all over the country. We visited Austin, Texas, Brazelton, Georgia, Bowmanville, Ontario, Watkins Glen, New York, and the Virginia countryside. But we have yet to cross an ocean for the championship, and that has changed for tonight. For round 6 of 8, we head to one of the most renowned racetracks in the world, Spa-Francorchamps. This track carries with it some of the greatest risks in auto racing, and some of the greatest rewards. To win at the same place as the Belgian Grand Prix, to hoist a trophy after conquering Eau Rouge and Radenso, that is a racing victory. Welcome to Sim TV for Radenso Sports Car Challenge. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined as always by racing driver and commentator Tom O'Gorman as we begin our 4-race sports car event in Stavelot, Belgium. Tom, this is our first and only trip across the ocean here to Stavelot, Belgium for the 7-kilometer Spa-Francorchamps. This racetrack is famous, it's fast, and it's risky around here for our 6th of 8 rounds in the 2020 championship.
And if you're going to pick a track outside of the U.S. to ship your race car to, I mean, Spa-Francorchamps is the place, I think. Very excited to come out here. And we're not only switching up the track, we're headed to a different continent, but we're also switching up the conditions. You see very foggy out right here right now, and pretty late in the day, which means race 2 tonight for each of our classes is going to be at night. First time we're doing night racing in Radenso Sports Car Challenge is going to be very cool.
Yeah, again, night racing. We do have another night race on the schedule. That will be the final race of the season in Daytona Beach, Florida. But that track has lights, Tom. There are lights here on the front straightaway. Everywhere else around the 7-kilometer circuit, it's going to be pitch black. The only illumination will come from the headlights of the cars, and that is pretty metal for a race car driver to drive into the forest here with nothing but their own headlights illuminating them 140 plus miles an hour down the Kemmel Straight. It's going to be pretty terrifying for some of these drivers, quite frankly, especially if you lose the pack and you're by yourself.
There's something about becoming one with your race car at night, and everything becomes more peaceful. Everything becomes a little more spidey sense driven. You kind of have to know exactly where your marks are based on muscle memory more so than vision. And for these drivers to kind of attempt that the first time, there's a beautiful overhead of Spa. Eau Rouge comes out just at the left side of the corner of the frame there, and then into the countryside of Belgium. It's just a beautiful place. I can't wait to see it in the fog and then at night.
Well, qualifying is underway right now. 5 minutes left in this. Again, we've got our field separated out into 2 different categories. The Grand Sport class, which has races 1 and 3 tonight. And of course, the TCR category, that will be races 2 and 4. So 4 races on tap for tonight. 5 minutes left in qualifying, but let's take a look at some of the places around this track, Tom, that we need to focus on. La Source, the first corner. This turn is so tight. It's so inviting because the entry is wide, but it narrows down very quickly. That's a trouble spot, but it heads into Eau Rouge. This corner named for the 9-mile long river that traverses underneath this facility. It's called Eau Rouge, red water, because the water itself is actually tinted rust red from all the iron deposits in the water. So that's what gives this corner the name. But the one that everyone talks about is Eau Rouge. That's not this entire complex. Eau Rouge is just the downhill left. The uphill right, that's Radenso that crests up this hill with a left-hander. And this is probably the most terrifying corner in all of motorsports. It's deadly, it's fast, and it's treacherous, especially on the first lap for these GS Grand Sport race cars.
The Porsche Cayman gets extremely light as you come up to Radenso there, and you basically straighten up the wheel after dipping through Eau Rouge and kind of hope that you come out the other side more than anything. The Grid Life iRacer Series actually came here with this car about a month ago, so a handful of these drivers have already raced at this track in this car in another series, and it was definitely just a game of survival on the first lap or two through that section. Then you drop down longest back straightaway, really, really great passing opportunity. Into a series of S's down the mountainside. Basically, you get a little break after a series of corners, and then a really, really fast left-hand sweep. There's the downhill into a couple more of those corners, a really fast sweeping left right here, and then a couple of more sequences of corners. It's basically one of those tracks where you feel like you're going somewhere all the time. It doesn't feel like you're just clicking off laps. It feels like you're on a country road, constantly traversing forward and going somewhere all the time.
And here's one of the corners that we're going to be talking about all night long, Blanchimont. This is a fast left-hander towards the end of the lap. You can pretty much take this almost full throttle. It's going to require maybe a lift just to settle the car. The TCR car should be pretty flat through here. Then you head to the bus stop chicane, the final corner on this racetrack. 17 turns around here, but let's run on board with Paul Darling here as he comes on through. This is through Pujol right now, as we're kind of in the middle way through the lap, but this just goes to show you how fast this place is. Tom, the 155 right now entering the backside of the course, over 100 miles an hour for the majority of this lap.
It's an extremely fast and wide place, and that's been a big conversation point amongst the drivers this week, is sort of the track limits. If you see right here as Paul tracks out, there's a bit of green turf that's perfectly usable in the car, but iRacing doesn't allow you to use it in qualifying to get a quote-unquote clean lap. Now, we don't enforce those clean laps in the race, which means that those can be abused a little bit, and everyone's kind of discussing amongst the gentlemen, what's the agreement? Are we allowed to use all of that? Are we allowed to use some of it? Do we want to try to, simulate real life or not? And I think when the gloves come off, it's going to be all everything's off. Basically have at it and throw it off the track if you need to. You see Jackson Robillard there going for a huge ride. That's not really any faster, but it's not allowed in qualifying, which we're in qualifying right now.
Right, so 2.5 minutes left, and you have to stay within the white lines for the duration of your qualifying lap for it to count. Rules, you got one steward, that's Fiddy Ndakuna, and he didn't want to have to bother with people. Because again, if you assign the iRacing limits, the track feels very, very constricting, almost to an unrealistic standpoint. It's also really difficult without a live administrator to kind of police track limits. So basically he said, let boys have at it. Everything between the walls is fair game. The only rule is that if you go off track, you have no right to barge back onto the course. If you go wide and someone else is in your way coming back on, you have to give way to them. And if you cause an incident, you are subject to very severe penalties. So let's keep an eye out for that as we go through tonight's event. So a minute 48 left in qualifying. Jackson Robillard has listed a 2:31.9, but it didn't count. I'm not sure he's going to get all the way back around for a second lap here, Tom. And the TCR cars will certainly not get more than one opportunity, even with the 10-minute time. It takes them a little while to wind up these cars up to full gear around here. So Jackson, I don't think he's going to get all the way back around to record a second lap time.
I think this is the longest lap time on the calendar at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds in the GS cars. The TCR cars, we expect probably 4 to 6 seconds slower than that. But Paul Darling is the race winning, the winningest driver on the season so far. He's won 4 of 10 races. He sits on pole right now by about 3/10 over Ken Hauseal, who has won 3 of 10 races. So between the two at the front right now, they've won 7 out of the 10. Then it's Kurt Crum, Alex Barroso, and Riley Thompson rounding out the top 5 right now. But you see just how long this lap is. The spread on lap time is pretty big. There's over a second between the top 5, and we haven't seen those kind of gaps before at any other race this weekend. I think that's any other race this season, I should say, partially because this is a less familiar track to a lot of drivers, but it's also just so long.
For sure. So Paul Darling and Ken Hauseal on pole, or on the front row at least, and no surprises there really, but Kurt Crum, Alex Barroso 3rd and 4th, Riley Thompson in 5th. Take a moment as we have a couple minutes or a couple seconds left in qualifying here to thank our sponsors for allowing us to be here tonight. Of course, Radenso. Radenso Radar offers windshield and hidden installed radar detectors with optional laser jammers. Radenso is known for having the best false alert filtering, so you get less annoying false alerts caused by blind spot monitoring on cars driving around you. You can visit Radenso.com to check out more. And of course, we're also brought to you by Lazy Rocket, high-quality custom decals at a low cost. You can message Lazy Rocket on Facebook or Instagram and mention SimTV for 20% off your order. Qualifying complete, Paul Darling is going to be your pole sitter tonight in the number 155, Tom. So 4 races, and one of the interesting things about this evening, we already mentioned the fog, but racing into the darkness is going to be a whole new thing. We haven't done it yet this season as we grid up another short warm-up lap here as well. So you got to get those tires warm before your first run down through Eau Rouge and Radenso.
It's a very short warm-up lap, and I think one of my keys to this race is absolutely just surviving ready on the first lap. By the second lap, they should be more or less okay, but I'm just looking down the list of drivers. We saw some of the absolute tightest battles we've seen all season at VIR just 2 weeks ago, and it's been 2 weeks, so it's almost easy to forget that we were just basically finishing hundredths and thousandths a second apart crossing the line there. And the 2 protagonists really for me on the championship are Ken Hausiel, Paul Darling. They're separated by 4 points, and that's simply down to Ken Hausiel has performed better in qualifying every single round than Paul Darling. Now, Paul Darling, for the first time now, I believe, is on pole and will score more bonus points in qualifying than Ken does. So that's immediately 1 point back to Paul. He's going to need a strong night to claw back those other 3 points, and those 2 are going to be door-to-door all night, I think.
So with the field gridding up and getting ready to go racing, again, a 20-minute race, an 8-lap event is what we're aiming for here. So the drivers in the field that we're also going to keep an eye on is, I'm looking at Alex Barroso, Tom. He was really, really fast, and he's only been getting better and better as the season goes on. He's sitting right behind those front 2, Hausiel and Darling. I think he's my pick to win tonight. I think those front 2 are going to have a nice close race. I just see Barroso being able to hang in there and go for the race win when it comes down to the last lap.
Yeah, we're also going to shift now from qualifying, like we said, with the track limits enforced by iRacing to basically no limits at all. And that's going to pick up about 1 second to 2 seconds of lap time for these cars, but it also is going to bring other drivers back into the fold where maybe, Darling clicked a lap off that was just perfectly within track limits, where Barroso maybe didn't, and now Barroso gets to come back on the race. So everything just kind of throws out the window as far as qualifying is concerned. You see a big burnout from all these guys as they try to warm the rear tires a little bit on the short run up to the green flag.
So we're going to let the starting lineup scroll on the bottom of the screen because we're not going to have enough time to go through all of it, I don't think, because we're already heading down through Blanchimont towards the final chicane. A great passing opportunity, but it's so tight, steeply uphill as well, and a lot of the Porsches in general have a really hard time getting through there without getting extraordinarily loose through that particular section of the racetrack. So watch out through that final chicane. Also, we've talked about it earlier, La Source. Where everything starts, the downhill run to Eau Rouge, that is a trouble spot, especially on the opening lap. And we started a different place than we finish, so it's going to be really interesting. We're actually going to start down towards Eau Rouge, and we'll finish up at this starting line right here. So, green flag in the air racing at Spa-Francorchamps. 8 laps of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Paul Darling leads the way. They're fanning out down into turn number 1, 3, and 4 wide through La Source. Hausiel stranded in the middle, Kirk Crum on the inside, and Barroso's going to get turned right in front of Riley Thompson. They'll collect him, continue. Now he gets turned again, and Lapras and him, as well as Thompson, will all slam into the barrier as they head down towards Eau Rouge for the first time. Everyone else flying through the first sector as they head up the hill.
God, huge bummer for 2 of the big contenders this week. I think that was actually Tala Sadiq that went with them, as Christopher Lapras had an incredible start up around the outside of the second row. Oh, more crashes. That's Blanchimont. It got Zach Buchanan, and is that Kevin Zhu?
It's Kevin Zhu there as well, so trouble for them. That is through Radenso as they head up the hill for the first time. Now Paul Darling leads the way into Les Combes for the first time. Ken Hausiel back to second place. Lapras was the car. I thought he got tagged up. It looks like he was able to continue, so he was not the car that spun. It was Tala Sadiq, in the 22 or the 163 car, I think that spun. You see the damage there on the left rear. Riley Thompson tucking in behind him now, but a troubled start. We knew it was going to be challenging, Tom, but what can the TCR field learn from that? I mean, it's a totally different platform. Are they going to struggle as much through Eau Rouge and Radenso as these guys did?
I really don't expect they will, because they're front-wheel drive, and that front-wheel drive is going to pull them the direction they want to be traveling, whereas these cars, mid-engine and rear-wheel drive, it's really easy to lose the back end on the cold tires. So the TCR cars, they're not going to have problems then until maybe the braking zone of turns 5 and 6, really. But right now, I'm pretty impressed with Paul Darling able to gap Ken Hausiel this early on, and Lapras with that killer start. He came around the outside at La Source and just kind of put the pedal to the metal and is up into third place right on the back of Ken Hausiel. But he's got Kirk Crum with him still, and Kirk Crum is always lurking in the background, ready to take a position at the first opportunity he gets to take it.
Yeah, so Crum tucks in right behind Christopher Lapras. You see Darling starting to stretch out a bit of a gap. I don't think that's where it's going to stay. I think we're going to see Hausiel close right back in. Kirk Crum runs a little wide. All fair game here tonight as they run up towards Blanchimont for the first time. You better hope those tires are nice and hot, because you're going to need every bit of grip that you can get Meanwhile, in the background, Montello's spun. He is at the exit of, I believe that's Stavelot down there, so he's got trouble in his number 24 Lazy Rocket car. For the first time through Blanchimont, that's Paul Darling leading the way.
This is that first braking zone, first time into the braking zone for the bus stop, and like you said, it's really easy to let the back end get away from you because you're transitioning so quickly from left side to right side as you turn right and then left. There's a look at Jackson Robillard getting the job done through the final corners. On this time now, Thompson and Sadiq have been side by side basically this entire lap after that tangle on the first lap, and they're pretty in touch with the field, which is lucky. They may be able to work their way close to the top 10 still, as they've got Barroso in front with no wing. That car is going to be a handful.
Up the road, you see another side-by-side grouping of cars. That's Rob Gagliardo and Finian D'Acuna. Finian didn't have a whole lot of practice tonight, so he's trying to make do with what he's got as the field heads down towards Eau Rouge once again. Reddy Bader Jr. has had some trouble down in turn number 1 in the Radenso 305 car. But it looks like Crum now has tracked down Lapras, and he's in the slipstream down the Camel Straight. And this is all going to be about slipstream, especially in TCR later tonight.
And these cars not known for drafting super well because you have to be going really, really fast to get them to draft, but luckily the straights here at Spa are really, really long. So we're going to see a lot of that as Lapras runs deep. Crum comes around the outside of him and is going to sweep across the nose and take the position. That's third place for Kurt Crum now. Ooh, a little wiggle on the exit of Malmedy, and now down onto the brakes.
There's Mark Lebance and Jackson Robillard, these two fighting for 7th spot right now. Race leader still has a 7/10 of a second gap over Ken Ausiel, but Lebance, it's only about a half a car length over the 98 of Jackson Robillard, again a competitor in the Global MX-5 Challenge in the real world, so he's familiar with driving race cars fast. The GT4 would be a step up from what he currently runs though, but he's adjusted quite nicely. He's had a lot of bad luck though this season.
Yeah, especially in race 2s throughout when we've inverted the field. With the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, as always, we invert between 10 and 20 cars, which means with 18 cars taking the start tonight, we could see a full field invert. But again, those second races can really make or break the night because of that invert. It's very challenging to get a clean start if you get buried in the pack as a faster car, and Jackson often kind of gets caught out in those second races we've seen this season.
And coming out of Pujol, there's actually a really big bump on the exit curve that I think is going to get somebody tonight, probably only in the Grand Sport cars. Look at Robillard, though. Through Stavelot, he's going to run wide, get a run on the 92 of Mark Lebance. But I want to watch the exit of Pujol. I think someone's going to fall victim to that tonight. Jackson in the grass for a moment as they head towards Blanchimont for the second time. And now he's feeling gripped up and ready to launch an attack on the 92. Full throttle through here, maybe a lift. He's going to run a little bit wide. There he goes over the curb. And now lining up an attack down into the braking zone for the final chicane.
And up at the front, it's 2.5 seconds. Paul Darling and Ken Ausiel have over Kurt Crum, so it's Robillard gets into the back of Lebance and he goes around. I don't know if the contact happened before or after Lebance started to slide, but that's that back end you talked about. It's really easy to let it get away from you when you transition from one to the other direction.
Yeah, I want to go back and take a look at that because I'm not sure. I didn't really get a good look at whether or not the contact happened before or after. Oh, definitely before. Robillard got in there a little bit hot and turned around the 92, so he had an issue. Brandon Burke has gone way wide at the exit of La Source, so he'll get back on course. Meanwhile, Lapras now is Schickel right behind him. Lapras, I want to say he's struggling here, Tom. He's inside the top 5, but he's not going the right direction.
No, and he actually had qualified, I believe, 6th. So based on pace, he's still ahead of where he qualified, but he had that amazing start and now is maybe not able to maintain the same pace as the other drivers around him. This is the battle for 3rd that we're seeing on screen with Kurt Crum in 3rd right now, up a ways a little bit from Lapras and Schickel. And last lap, we saw Crum and Lapras have that small exchange to swap positions after Lapras made the mistake, and that's what gifted about a 2-second lead to the leaders right now. So my advice to Lapras and Schickel is if you're going to bicker, get it done pretty quickly or you're going to lose Kurt Crum in the process.
Well, big slide for Schickel as he exits that corner, trying to get the power down, slid just slightly. Darling has an 0.8 of a second lead, but I'm looking at the lap times here, Tom. It was only by a couple thousandths of a second, but Ausiel was slightly quicker. Maybe the slipstream on the Camel Straight could bring him back in, but I would not count this 23 car out yet.
And he's just close enough to really get a sniff of that draft, so he's well within the distance that if he's not the fastest car through the corners, the draft is going to make up for it. Although Ken Ausiel is one of the drivers that has this car figured out best of everyone, so I don't think he's going to have a problem with pace. You see he's closed up just a little bit now, coming into Stavelot and onto that back straightaway. where the draft will kick in just about the first left-hand kink as they're working their way uphill. It's a very significantly uphill run. Doesn't really transition to camera, but right about here is where that draft's going to start to come into effect. They're going to pull 6th gear somewhere right about here. A quick drag of the brakes to set the weight on the front nose of the car to get it to turn in, and then kind of let it go wherever it needs to go from there.
And that's scary to let the car run wide there, because that runoff is very slippery, and it's also, there's a lot of dirt there. You can see it offline. There's a lot of dirt and gravel and that sort of stuff that's kind of accumulated. So that's going to be a trouble spot as the race leaders come across to complete lap number 3, as here's Riley Thompson. He's just gotten by Barroso, and Barroso wants back by into the braking zone for the chicane. Oh, Sadiq way late to the brakes, but he's going to get it slowed down. The 15 car actually missing that rear wing, and that's got to be impacting performance at least slightly.
Especially when you get to sections like Radenso or Blanchimont, that car is going to be a major handful. And weirdly enough, when you lose your wing, you actually lose straight line speed a little bit in these cars. Whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. But Barroso is going to be hurting for straight line speed. As all 3 of these guys actually have some body damage, so they're going to need to draft to keep up with the rest of the cars around them. Trying to work on catching Rob Gagliardo right now for 8th.
Field heading down through Eau Rouge now for the 4th time, and this doesn't get any easier. Every single lap, you're just clenching. Oh, there's a spin! And it's Rob Gagliardo in front of these drivers, and everybody flying by him at over 130 miles an hour. And he's going to reset back to the pit lane. Look like race over for him, but this is what I'm talking about. It doesn't get any easier, Tom. Here's a look at what just happened to Rob Gagliardo.
And right about here, you got to straighten your wheel up and just trust that the car is going to float through there. And it's so easy. I can't emphasize how easy it is to get that wrong. And Riley Thompson almost got bitten by it as well. See right there, he just had a little bit of right hand down still, and then the back just floats away from him as he crests Radeon. And just behind him, actually, I was looking at Riley Thompson, who had gotten behind the car a little bit and had to use all the runoff and more just to save it. Right here, that's so scary, That's to have happen in the car.
Over 130 mile an hour section, and it's they call it Eau Rouge because of the river that runs underneath that previous section, Tom. But there's a lot of different ways you could take that as well. It's a pretty sketchy corner. And it really is a terrifying proposition to run through. They're almost full throttle in these cars. Meanwhile, up at the front, coming to halfway this time through, Darling and Hausiel, 7/10 between them. But the battle right now is for 9th. It's Alex Barroso, Tal Sadiq, and Finian Dacuna in the 94. Almost no practice tonight getting prepared for this event. He's up 5 spots right now, so good run for him so far.
Yeah, doing a great job, and I think the bigger point is Thompson, Barroso, and Sadiq, who all had that incident on the first lap, had dropped to the back, and they're now 8th, 9th, and 10th. So they've all worked their way back into the top 10, and that's going to be important for championship points. But also, you have to remember, we invert at least 10 cars. So Sadiq is potentially the first potential pole sitter for race number 2. So all those guys have done a good job to guarantee they get inverted towards the front, as we still only have 15 cars running anymore with 4 laps to go.
Hausiel has made a big mistake, and he had lost some ground to Paul Darling, but he immediately closes right back up, plus some. It's less than 7/10 of a second now, the gap as they come to halfway. So make it 4 laps to go for the race leaders. Hausiel was a little slower that time. He needs to put in the work to get slightly closer as they head down into Eau Rouge for the 5th time now. As Tal Sadiq...
watching that...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, been watching the gap between Darling and Hausiel in Sector 2, kind of the infield section, the handling section, whatever you want to call it. Darling has pulled out a gap every single time. So these long straightaways in sectors 1 and 3 are keeping Hausiel within touch. You see he's picked up about 1.5 tenths from the start finish line to now. But if the trend holds true, Paul Darling will put 3 or 4 tenths on Ken, basically from now until Stavelot for the back straight. It's just looking like Darling is really strong through this sector of the track.
And this corner is a 180-degree downhill. The track falls away from you. You got to keep it tight. Hausiel does a pretty good job getting through there. Meanwhile, Sadiq and Barroso, they are nose to tail right now. Barroso still struggling without that rear wing. Again, you're not relying a ton on the rear wing for downforce in these cars. They don't have a lot of downforce, and not nearly as much as a GT3 car does, but it's not helping you to have that wing missing, and Barroso is struggling with it right now.
it just makes it a little more skittish right on the fine edge of the car, which is where you have to drive this thing to be fast. So Barroso's definitely got a handful and a half right now, as Sadiq has worked his way past him into 9th. And they've lost touch just a little bit with Riley Thompson, who's now working his way towards Jackson Robillard, but he's got 7 seconds to find if he wants to get up there. And with only 2.5 laps left, 3.5 laps left, it's going to be a tall order to get any higher than 8th for Thompson.
Race leader Paul Darling has fallen into the clutches of Hausiel. Now it's only 0.4 of a second. We thought we'd see this gap grow here, Tom, but it looks like Darling might have slipped because Hausiel is now well within slipstream range, 0.3 of a second on the back straight. He'll be close enough to have a look into La Source this time if he continues gaining at this rate.
It'll be interesting right here. Does he chuck it through and use the track limits a little bit? No, he plays fair through there, so they're keeping it on track between the two of them for the most part. Now deep on the brakes down into the final chicane. Hausiel actually had a little slide 2 laps ago through here. As you see, you just get up to the that second stage curbing, but you don't want to hit it as it'll chuck the car up in the air. And through that final chicane, it looks like Darling puts about 2 or 3 tenths on Hausiel, getting through there a little more smoothly for the 155.
3 laps to go now, lap 6 of 8. Darling tucks it down into La Source. Hausiel tries to close, but it's corner exit where Darling is gaining. And he's really impressive to get the power down on the ground. Meanwhile, Tala Sadiq and Alex Barroso work their way through the final chicane. Look at Barroso using every little bit of the racetrack. Gonna have a run down into La Source. We'll see if we'll have a look.
And it's looking to me like, based on the gaps between these two, that Barroso's faster through the corners, but Sadiq, without as much body damage, is fast enough down the straightaways that Barroso can't really do anything with him. You see, through every single apex, Barroso gets really close, and then you just come off the corner and slowly spread out down these straightaways. You see the car just getting a little bit further away, and that's frustrating from Barroso's position.
Oh, look at how chaotic this corner is. It's like taking flight through there every time you crest Gradillon. It's so terrifying to run through there at that speed that we were seeing today. But look at Darling, still keeping Hausiel behind him, but Hausiel's not letting Darling pull away. With 2 laps to go next time by, is that enough time for Hausiel to get there? I just don't think the differential in pace is quite big enough.
I mean, I would call him more or less there at this point. I don't know that it's close enough for him to do anything with it, though. He's keeping Paul honest, and he's just got to kind of hope that Paul makes a mistake just once. But it looks like Darling really has that car underneath him and is pretty confident in just placing it where he knows it can be, and just clicking these laps off, which is what we've seen him do. Anytime he gets to the front, he seems to be able to just control the race from the front every single round this year that he's won, except for at VIR, where he won by that 0.007 of a second margin coming onto the front straightaway the last lap.
Wasn't that a spectacular race a couple weeks ago at Virginia International Raceway? That was a heck of a fight. How about this fight? Francois Brou, who I have to give him a huge thank you for doing the voiceover for the intro for tonight's event. Did that on the fly this afternoon. I appreciate that. Jackson Robillard, though, putting the pressure on him. This is for 6th. Run through Stavelot. He's going to have a look on driver's right. Brou's going to leave him the space.
It's the hard way around, but you can make it happen. He's got more distance to cover, and he's going to have to tuck back in. Just didn't have the run on it this time.
Now Brou's going to have to try to keep it tucked in tight. Robillard going to, a little bit of understeer there for the 69. That's going to leave him under attack here as they head down to the braking zone. Robillard's going to look to driver's right. Door slams shut, backs out, thinks better of it.
And Brou gets the car stopped
he's around
as well. Oh.
And that's exactly what we talked about in the pre-race there, Tom. That corner, so challenging and so easy to let the car loop around.
I thought he was going to get it slowed down sufficiently, but he carried just a little bit too much speed in, and once you get that weight swaying one way, these mid-engine cars just don't like to transition back the other way, especially right on that limit, and that's going to give Riley Thompson another position, actually. I wasn't expecting Thompson to be able to have the opportunity to get higher than 8th. Now that's 7th place for the 56 car.
Nicely done for the 56. Meanwhile, 2 laps ago, the race leaders, Darling and Hausiel, still chasing each other. It's a cat and mouse game now as they head into Lake Home, now for the 7th time. And this is, right now, I don't think these guys realize this quite yet, Tom, but the next time they're going to take to this racetrack after this will be in the pitch black. And if you're Paul Darling, you're not going to be able to see, and Hausiel will at least have the advantage of being able to see the leader's brake lights. So you get the little, target fixation, but something is better than nothing. And I'm not sure if I want to be the race leader in the next one, because they're going to be just driving into the darkness of the forest.
And that's going to be a big question. Who's practiced in the dark? Because It's one thing to practice. It's another thing to practice in the correct conditions. And I don't know if any of these guys thought much about that. I'm sure they did. These guys are very experienced with sim racing and these series. Ooh, look at that! How much of a handful Barroso's car is. He's gotten back around Sadiq somewhere, but you just see how floaty the back end of that 15 is without the wing. Still sliding.
He did a good job hanging on to it. Now, I do know that there was a practice race earlier this week. The only driver, I think it was Francois Brou, was the only driver to run that race. He just did it all by himself, and he made a comment about how dark it was as Finian D'Acunha is going to go around for a spin. Ooh, that's damage as well to the 94. This, I believe, is at the exit of maybe Lake Home here. As he comes on through, just chucks the car in, yes. And he already had the damage, but added to it in the tire barrier there. Jump back up to the race leaders. 0.7 of a second. The gap has kind of re-extended itself. But all it takes is one little mistake, and Darling might be feeling the pressure, especially towards the end of next lap. So keep it cool, keep it calm. He's got a great lead. He hasn't given it up yet, but 7 kilometers left as they come to the start-finish line this time through.
Darling has the fast lap of the race. He's the only driver to run a 2:29 anything. These guys are flirting right with that 2-minute 30 range where they qualified. A new fast lap for Paul Darling, a 2:29.8 that time through, as he has now one of the most comfortable leads he's had over Hausiel coming onto this final lap, which is going to give him some confidence. He's just got to do one more of those laps. Don't change anything. Don't try anything fancy. Just bring it home at this point for Darling, and that would be race number 5, win number 5, I should say, of 11 on the season. It's becoming a pretty dominant performance from Paul Darling so far. He's just got to bring it through here one more time. The scariest section of the track is done, and now just keep that rhythm going.
And look at Francois Brou's gotten back around Riley Thompson for 7th, so puts him back to 8th. Meanwhile, Brennan Burke and Finian D'Acunha, that's for 12. Ooh. I think Finian's struggling with some handling issues with that damage, but the race leaders into Lake Home now for the final time in the daylight. The fog maybe obscuring slight amount of visions, but wait until the next race tonight. It's going to be pitch black out there. Hausiel right behind Darling, half a second back. It's going to take a mistake for Darling to lose this at this point, but anything can happen, especially in Blanchimont at 130, 140 miles an hour.
And these drivers are pushing so hard. These are the most intense races, I always say, when you are not necessarily racing side by side, but you're so close together and the pace is so similar that you just can't put a foot wrong. And neither of these drivers really have yet. I just think Paul Darling has figured something out in a little bit quicker than Hausiel, whereas if you flip it on its head last week at VIR, it was the exact opposite. Ken Hausiel just had something figured out, and the guys behind him couldn't do anything with it. Now they're coming down into the final couple of corners really on this track, and then you get onto that long back straight. You get a breather. Gonna float all the way out to the gravel here. Hausiel doing everything he can. It's only 4.5 tenths back at this point. That is within drafting distance to stay close, but I think he's gonna need to be only about 2 tenths back if he wants to get a draft into the final corner and be able to make a pass.
Paul Darling
right at 4 tenths.
has been almost flawless for this entire race. Started on the pole and was able to drive away, but not far enough away to escape the clutches of Ken Hausiel. Final corner, the chicane this time through lap 8 of 8. The daylight dwindling here as the fog rolls in. Darling slips and slides, so does Hausiel. Braking zone for the chicane for the final time. It looks like Paul Darling, as long as he gets through here without any dramas, he'll come through, accelerate out. Checkered flag waves. Paul Darling winner in race 1 tonight for Grand Sport.
And that makes it 5 on the season for the 155 car. An incredible performance, going to tip the championship lead back to Paul Darling as well. So Hausiel is going to have to respond in race number 2 if he wants to bring this thing home. But this is the battle for 7th. Thompson's gotten back by Bruce somewhere in the middle of the track. And now they're coming into the final corner. This is pretty much the only opportunity Brew would have had to get by. Tries to maybe set up an over-under, but Thompson's not going to let it happen. He comes home 7th after a disastrous start. And we'll have to see what does that invert do. We're inverting between 10 and 20 cars. It could be anywhere between Tala Sadiq on pole and a full field invert, and that's going to be really exciting at night.
Randy Bader up 5 spots. He started dead last, and just surviving has gotten him up to 13th. He sees 12th right in front of him. A huge run into Blanchimont. He's going to back out early. Burke's going to run way wide at corner exit, all the way into the gravel. Now, the final chicane in the braking zone. Burke hard onto the binders. Randy Bader Jr. will he push it in? He's going to close up, right to the rear bumper. Burke slides wide, back to driver's left, and he'll come out of the final corner and take home 12th. But that was close for Randy Bader.
almost got the Radenso car up to 13th, and those guys bring it across the line. I think they're the last two running on track, so we did have quite a bit of attrition, and most of it was self-inflicted, which is what we expected. But a guy that didn't have any problems, Paul Darling, coming home with the win by a half second over Kuhn Hausiel, and Kurt Krum, after getting past Chris Lapras, ran a pretty lonely last 6 laps or so to bring it home in third.
A good race for sure. There was a couple, distinct battles in there. I'm really excited for the TCR race, though, Tom. Those races are typically a little bit closer together. The draft is going to be a bigger factor. Also, front-wheel drive platform, totally different driving style. That's what's coming up next, TCR race number 1. With that, we're going to run through the results one more time. Again, we're going to talk to your race winners at the end of the night. So stay tuned for in about 6 or 7 minutes. We'll be live again for TCR race number 1 from Spa-Francorchamps. We'll be right back. Welcome back live to Sim TV and the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, round number 6 of 8 from Spa-Francorchamps. We just saw Grand Sport race number 1. Now it's time for TCR race number 1. Tom, you've got a lot of experience in these cars. You won in one of these at Virginia International Raceway in Road Atlanta in this exact vehicle, the RS3 TCR. This is a combination that you haven't driven, but I'm sure you would have loved to have driven. This is a spectacular racetrack, as we saw in the first race. Totally different platform, but I think this is going to be an amazing, amazing race.
Yeah, one day maybe I'll cross my fingers that I'll get to drive one of these on Spa someday, but these cars very different in style than the GS cars we just saw. The Porsche Cayman is a kind of a higher starting point of performance vehicle, so it's lesser modified for GT4, little less downforce reliant and less modified in general. Now you take an Audi TCR car, which is a front-wheel drive 2-liter turbo car, about 330 horsepower to the ground with the front tires there, and a lot more downforce reliant, and just a different driving style, a different racing style as well. And these guys tend to have the closest races, both in real life and in the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. They put on some incredible shows, and I think you're right, tonight will be no less. All the heavy hitters are here, and it looks like from practice at least, as we're working our way through qualifying, Andrew Pilata and Kyle Herbst were on top a 10th apart, and they were a pretty good gap ahead of Elias Roman, Eric Mickey, Caleb John Lavender, and Tyler Jones, who are all in the 2:33 range. So believe it or not, these cars less than 2 seconds slower, right around 2 seconds slower than the GT4 cars we just saw. These things haul a mail.
New drivers this week. There's Sarah Tessem in the number 70 driving for Project 2. So this is a heck of a way to start out the season. Certainly not the easiest way to go. Caleb John Lavender in the 999. He's out here as well as we take a look at his Audi RS3 TCR, his Juggernaut Energy vehicle. Currently first with a 234.6 as we come across the line. The first drivers recording their lap times. Eric Mickey in the 88 has had a heck of a season, Tom. Continues to win races left and right. Tonight, though, it's going to be difficult to break away with that big draft.
I really think so. And he also had a forgettable race 2 at VIR, really struggled, and it was kind of the first time that we saw him finish outside the top group of cars. He's won 4 of the 10 races. Andrew Pilata's won 3. Kyle Herbst has won 2, and Darwin Mintz, who I don't see in the server tonight, was our other race winner. So only 4 race winners so far out of 10 races this season, and Eric Mickey has absolutely been the class of the field as far as consistency goes up until the most recent round. Andrew Pilata has struggled a little bit more with that consistency, and not always by his doing. We've had some pretty major lap 1 incidents in TCR, just kind of freak accidents that were more like the Talladega big one than they were anything else. And some new rules were put in place. We haven't had that happen since, but Pilata has struggled a little more with consistency. And just looking at the championship, it's Mickey and Pilata at the front with about 20 points separating those 2 drivers. So we'll figure out what that means once we factor in the drops after all 16 rounds. But Eric Mickey is still the guy to beat, although tonight it's looking like Pilata is one of the fastest cars once again.
There is Ryan Kristoff in the number 46. Again, he's got his Eibach and Grid Life sponsored car in here tonight. He's actually converting his GLTC vehicle to look very much like this, which is going to be very exciting to have his car look so cool. But he has yet to put in a lap. Louis Alessi has put in a lap as well, a 236.2. He's currently at the bottom on the board. Brad Adams is here tonight in the number 21 Grid Life car. We love Brad. He's always an entertaining guy to be around. And tonight, going to give a stab at Spa-Francorchamps. Mitch Welker is here tonight. I think this is the first time we've seen him in Radenso Sports Car Challenge in the TCR category. He's driving the Vantage eSports car tonight. A purple people eater out there, Tom. Currently sits 8th in qualifying.
Yeah, I think he was competing, there it is, the GS car he was been driving for the full season so far. Switching over to TCR this week for whatever reason. Maybe he's been seeing how much action the TCR guys get in the race and is going, I want to get in on that. So switching over this week, and only 11 drivers getting lap time, now 12 getting lap time so far out of 18. 19 on the field. So again, we've kind of talked about track limits and how they don't exist in the race, but they very much do exist in qualifying. And getting a clean lap here around Spa is a big challenge. They get 4 tries at it in 10 minutes, which is not mathematically possible in a TCR car. So it's pretty much 3 and done for TCR tonight. There's Elias Roman coming to complete a flyer. He's looking for some pace. Does he get a clean one in the book? Yes, goes to P3 at a 2:34.3.
That's a really solid lap time, so he'll go 3rd best. We saw Mitch Welker had improved momentarily to 6th, then got knocked down the order as a couple other drivers came on through. How about Kyle Herbst, 6th quick in the number 89. Eric Mickey goes 5th fastest, but Caleb John Lavender in the 999 really impressed with his pace right now. He leads by almost 2/10 over Andrew Pilata. So those two right now the class in the field. Tyler Jones in the number 29. He's gone 4th best with a 2:34.335, only 2/1000ths off of starting on a podium spot. So gonna work really hard. I'm not sure he'll get enough time to come all the way back around again. He's only in Lacombe now, but he's certainly gonna give it a chance. Meanwhile, the other Vantage Esports car. That's Christian Gritzko in the 19. He is right next to his teammate Mitch Welker as it stands. The purple and blue cars would be on the same row number 5. Benson Ties logged a lap. Max Lupfer is here but has not yet recorded a lap, so he'll start from the tail of the field. 19 cars on the grid for TCR race number 1.
Yeah, I'm just kind of clicking through to see who might get a lap in. It looks like Chris Harp is finishing up a flyer, and he's sitting 11th right now. Most of these drivers are not going to get a chance to finish the flyer that they're on, as the time will expire. There's Chris Harp, comes across with a small improvement. Pretty surprised, actually. The fastest time in practice was a 2:32.2 from Andrew Pilata. The pole time right now is looking like it's going to be that 2:34 flat, so almost 2 seconds off of the fastest lap in practice for these guys in qualifying. And the TCR cars take a little bit of time to come up to pace, but I wouldn't think 4 full laps of Spa is too short to get these front tires up. So either everybody just decided to say screw it on track limits and was flying in practice, or these guys not able to extract the speed in qualifying for whatever reason here.
I wouldn't think that you could get as much time off track in this car as you could in the Grand Sport car. So I'd be a little bit surprised if it was track limits. I almost am inclined to think that a lot of it had to do with maybe the draft in practice when you're running around with other cars. And if it's a 2-second gap, Tom, oh boy, we're about to see a Talladega-style pack race out here. I'm excited to see that.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it is a 2-second gap because of how long. I mean, these cars are only 300 some horsepower. They're not that fast in a straight line. And we're talking the huge long runs down the 2 main straightaways, the Kemmel Straight and then basically the straight from Stavelot to the chicane. That's a whole lot of time flat out in these TCR cars. And if you're in the draft, I could totally see gaining somewhere close to 2 seconds on lap time. That's a very good point.
So waiting for the gridding process to complete here, and it looks like we will have Max Lupfer. He'll be starting right at the tail of the field on the Wins livery Audi RS3. So I don't think Max Lupfer is going to finish dead last year, Tom. So how aggressive are you to be? This is not a super long race. It's 8 laps. But we saw a lot of carnage on the first sector, essentially, of race number 1 for Grand Sport. Are we going to see something similar, or do you think this is going to go a lot cleaner? I'm inclined to think we're not going to see a lot of crashing at all because the front-wheel drive platform is a lot more forgiving with slipping and sliding here on the opening lap cold tires.
Can you hear that?
I sure
that's
can.
That's me knocking on my wood desk for what you just said. But I totally agree. I think if anything, we've seen the TCR cars have issues on the brakes into slow corners on the first laps, which, you know, here on this racetrack, we start with a slow corner. So we may see some drivers struggling with rear end grip going into that corner on the brakes. And then really, I don't see anybody losing it in the Eau Rouge Radeon section because they're front wheel drive. As long as you're on power, the car is going to be pulling itself through that section. And then the next braking zone down to Lake Combe is potentially the next time that if they don't have heat in the tires, it's going to be tricky to get the car into those corners. So I'm inclined to agree. Once again, I'll knock on that and make sure that these guys don't have any bad luck coming to the green flag. But look at this on the front row. Caleb John Lavender and Andrew Pilata, who have a pretty good advantage on pace based on qualifying.
A couple tenths up on the rest of the field. So it's going to translate, I think, to the race. So 8 laps, about 20 and a half minutes of racing on schedule for this race. Again, race 2 of these drivers at the end of the night will be in the pitch black, so they better enjoy being able to see while they can. They work their way through the final chicane, getting ready to go racing as they come now towards La Source, where it all begins here at Spa-Francorchamps. And Caleb John Lavender, the 999, brings us to the green. Green flag flies, racing the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, TCR race number 1.
It's a good start for both Roman and Mickey from the bow. They're going to go 3 wide. Pilata gets a little bit of an advantage, but they're side by side now. Mickey gets a good run through the middle of the corner. Pilata shoots way off, as does Herbst. And now they start the run. A little bit of an incident between, that's Alessi, and who else was that?
Andrew Chow.
Now down towards, we're going to hold our breaths through Eau Rouge.
Oh, side by side touch! And there goes Tyler Jones, way off course. He's going to slam the barriers in Eau Rouge, and there's parts laying everywhere. That is a horrible crash for Tyler Jones. He'll get back rolling. That's pretty much game over, and that's the danger of Eau Rouge and Radeon on lap number 1. He went through there side by side in a touch. That's all it takes to take him out of the race. Meanwhile, look at this. Pilata leads the way side by side for second behind him. 2 and 2, side by side. Herbst on the inside, maybe a touch with Eric Mickey. He goes through in the 88 to 3rd place.
Great start for Mickey up from 5th, now onto the podium. and the rest of the field still working on getting single file, as now Christoph finally squeezes in front of Gritzko, but Herbst also had a pretty decent start to come back from what was at one point 7th, I think, and now back to 4th.
We'll go back and look at that incident at the end of the race. Meanwhile, everyone else tucking in line. Look at Christian Gritzko putting all sorts of pressure on the back of Ryan Christoph. He pushes him wide as they head down towards Hall for the first time here at Speed.
And Max Lupfer up to 11th. That 688 is going to be fun to watch for the rest of this race. But both of these drivers run wide. Was there a touch from Gritzko onto the back of Christoph? And that's going to give Welker a potential run on both. Oh, they door each other at the exit. Christoph gives it back to him. And Christoph's going to try to protect on Gritzko, but he's in deep. And Welker coming back underneath once again. No love lost between any of these guys. And now Brad Adams goes for a spin on Lupfer.
Oh, he's going to go hard into the barrier as well. Couldn't get it turned back around. That's going to be a hard hit for him. The teammates now side by side teaming up on Ryan Christoph as they exit Stavelot right now and head towards the backside of the course for the first time. That got physical there for a moment. We're not done yet. Christoph back to driver's right as they head now towards Blanchimont. 3 wide. Don't try it here, boys. They're going to do it. Gritzko backs out, they touch, they're gonna crash. Gritzko gonna slam the attenuator hard into the wall, and Sarah Tessum hits him as well, and big damage on these cars. And that's a huge incident towards the end of lap number 1.
Man, so unfortunate that it happened in a straight line, and I think that was really on Lupfer. Had a big run and was drafting up to the back of what I think was Christoph. We'll go back and look at it later, but they were almost 4 wide, and the overlaps were just really awkward, and it loosened up Gritzko and put him into the wall. Now that's going to take another couple cars out of this race. A lot of heavy hitters out of this race. It really is. Look at the run of Lupfer. The 688 is going to get a run up underneath Christoph. Can't decide if he wants to bump draft him or get alongside, and as he takes a peek, probably for visibility more than anything, gets into the back of Gritzko, loosens him up and puts him hard into the wall and gets collected by Tessum. And I don't think Christoph got out of there completely scot-free either.
Watch this hit. That is an absolutely vicious impact right back across the track. Tessum nowhere to go, and that's a huge, huge hit for those drivers there. And you see the tires rolling away, parts and pieces, but just the absolute worst place to get hit here, Tom, as these guys all get together and just watch this impact.
Ugh. Oh. It's pretty incredible damage modeling, really. It's not fun to get a sample look at that, but tires, bumpers flying everywhere. Back at the front group is really tight. Only 3 seconds spread from Dylan Broyles in 6th all the way up to Andrew Pilata at the front. So there was chaos outside of the top 6, but we still have a heck of a race under us here for the win, as Pilata was the class of the field on pace in practice and has established himself to the front right now. Max Lupfer finally ends up in the wall for himself. I think he was kind of the spark for that big incident that we were just finished watching. Actually,
that was a hip check from Ryan Christoph there is what triggered that whole situation.
Yeah, that looked weird. I don't know if that was him trying to get back on track or...
Runs out wide over the edge of the curve. I think he was turning right to try to get by the 36 of Chris Harp, and just nowhere to go there for the 688.
He had a run on Harp, but he had no idea that he was still alongside Lupfer and just body slams him into the tires. Wow. That's more hard hits tonight. I think Finian's going to have his work cut out for him stewarding this race after the fact.
I'm shocked by this. I thought we'd see a lot cleaner race. We've already lost about 7 cars to crash damage early in the going. Look in second place, though. That's Caleb John Lavender under pressure from Eric Mickey now as they head towards the final chicane now for the second time through Blanchimont. Kyle Herbst lurking at the back of this group as well.
Whoa, and he's not paying attention to track limits at all. Mickey's going to try the deep lunge on the brakes. Not going to get it done this time on Lavender, but they're all in pretty deep, and the more they battle it out for second, the less opportunity they're going to have to run down Pilata, who's still at the front. But he's not going anywhere. These cars draft really well, and Lavender is well within that distance, only 4.5 tenths of a second between first and second. Count Mickey and the rest of them still in there, well within distance if they start to battle side by side.
Okay, Kyle Herbst using every little bit of the racetrack, so does Dylan Broyles, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all together as they start lap number 3 now. The run down through Eau Rouge and Radillon at 137 miles an hour is what Kyle Herbst peaked at there. Now you crest the hill. Look at that big cut there for Caleb John Lavender. Going to watch out for a slowdown. That will absolutely kill your run, but Lavender with a great run now. We'll see if he can run all the way to the back of Pilata here on the straight.
Interestingly, he's not really attempting to draft. You see, he's just kind of using his run to look to the outside. That could be for visibility, or it could just be because he doesn't want to yet. He doesn't want to pick this fight because he knows Mickey's there, and Mickey is the guy they're all trying to beat. They may even have a gentleman's agreement to say, I don't care who wins as long as it's not Eric, because Eric's won so much this year and finished just up so far forward, I should say.
You look at the left side of the ticker, there's a 7-car list of drivers with the out tag next to them. That's because of all the dramas we had on the opening couple laps. Caleb John Lavender, though, trying to keep the drama behind him and focus out front, but Mickey is not going to be satisfied with sitting in third. Kyle Herbst is a wild card. Remember, he was suspended after incidents, I believe, at Watkins Glen. Sat out, rode Atlanta, came back at VIR, was instantly competitive, and went back to win one of those races, I believe, or at least finish up near the front. Here he sits in fourth and putting pressure on third place Eric Mickey.
Yep, he won race 2 at VIR, and he was the second fastest car in practice. So again, we're kind of discussing whether or not that had to do with draft or what, or track limits, we're not sure. But Kyle Herbst looks like he's the only driver really willing to say, throw track limits to the wind. I'm just going to go fast. And so far it's paying off. He's really close within touch, and if he can pick off 1 car per lap, he'll get to Pilata right now.
Coming to lap number 4, but I don't think we've seen Caleb John Lavender play all of his cards yet, Tom. Again, maybe just sitting in behind Pilata, but he's getting away slightly. How far back does that drafting effect extend for, do you think?
I would say at least a second, if not a second and a half, and obviously the closer you get, the stronger it is. But now both Mickey and Herbst run wide. Mickey looks to the other side this time. Once again, on the brakes pretty early. He's just trying to pressure Lavender into a mistake, but whoa, runs wide that time somehow, and Herbst gets underneath him. They're going to go side by side on a drag race down to La Source.
And we saw the 89 car get all sorts of sideways on the binders, trying to get the car woed down. Elias Roman's going to have a look up the inside of the 89. That got really tight, but he's going to bully his way through, run the 89 out of the edge of the racetrack. Now he's going to let him back in. He didn't have to do that, but I think Herbst had a big enough run where he's able to clear him before he got there. Now the run down again through Eau Rouge, and Caleb John Lavender, maybe he's got some space now. This is a time, I would say, is safer to pass the race leader than when you have everyone right behind you.
Absolutely. This is a great opportunity because he doesn't have any threat from behind right now. And what's interesting also, looking at the gaps, Pilata was able to put some distance on Lavender through the middle of the track. Again, Sector 2, just like Paul Darling was faster in Sector 2. But Lavender looks really, really strong out of the final chicane and through the first couple corners of this lap. Ooh, side by side around the outside for Roman. He's going to get it done. Does Herbst keep the nose there? Oh, he's trying.
Oh, touch! And Elias Roman's going to go sliding, front wheel drive, save it, throttle back to the floor. He'll get back on course, but Herbst is through to fourth with a bit of a push here and a push there, and he's on through and puts Elias Roman back to sixth. So that'll certainly get looked at later, but it's going to get physical out there, Tom. We've seen it already, but elbows out. We're not even halfway through this race.
Yeah, it's been physical, and unfortunately, I don't know that they ever cleared each other. I think Roman was hoping that Herbst would lift a little bit, and Herbst seemed like he always had at least an inch of his car there, and I would say they were side by side long enough that Roman owed him a little bit of space and maybe didn't give it to him. But again, we need to either go back and look at it or let Finian take care of that one. At the front, Mickey's now closed up back to Lavender, so Lavender didn't take the opportunity that he had for a breather from behind and couldn't go anywhere with it to Pilata. So those three now equal distance, only 5/10 of a second from first to third right now on the track.
You have to wonder if Caleb John Lavender has done his research and if he has decided maybe that being out front is the wrong place to be until they come into the checkers. I don't want to be the race leader. I don't want to be in Pilata's position. This is almost like a race that you'd see in the Global MX-5 car where you sit in second and you make a move on the last lap. Eric Mickey, though, he might not have that same agenda. Look at him tucking right to the back of the 999. Going to run wide here, maybe. Door gets blocked, and he'll have a look down to the chicane, but he's going to back out. So I think all these drivers are on a similar page right now, trying to lock out Herbst, Broyles, and a Roman in behind.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I haven't seen anybody attempt to go somewhere with speed, but the speed's definitely there. You saw how close Mickey got to the back of Lavender, and Lavender also had a draft. So the draft is a big influence, and the longer they wait to fight, the longer it's going to keep all of these drivers in that battle, all the way back to Broyles, who's in fifth. Roman now kind of in no man's land, but if these guys just continue to run close nose to tail, even Roman could get back up there. We have full whole laps to go.
Down the hill again, towards Eau Rouge. Full throttle, let's ride on board here. A slight breather in the uphill right-hander over the curb. And now look at the run that he builds here, Tom. He's going to it's going to feel like he's got a massive speed boost. And again, I don't think he's going to take it, but again, he's got such a good run. And he's just testing right now. Here he goes. Now he's going to move to driver's right. Pilata's going to leave the lane open, and I think Caleb John Lavender is going to go back to the race lead in Lake Home. Backs out.
They're going to go side by side. Actually, yeah, it looks like that outside run into Lake Home is really, really fast, as both Roman tried it and Pilata just pulled it off. He's going to maintain the race lead, and it didn't really upset this whole group much. So they're going to go single file again for a little bit of time. But Roman's clawed back 0.7 of a second on these guys just in the amount of time since the last time we mentioned him. Now only 3.2 seconds back, as it was 3.9.
And Dylan Broyles at the back of this group, maybe a wild card. We've seen his performances be really spot on the last couple weeks since he joined this series. So he is maybe the wild card in this group, other than Kyle Herbst, who we know is willing to do pretty much anything to get back to the race lead. Ryan Carwile, in the background, he's going to leave pit lane after spending quite a long time on the pit road getting repairs. But four-way, make it five-way battle for the race lead. Roman is now 2 seconds back from this front fight.
Mickey is hunting. He's starting to look a little more racy, and he's showing himself in the mirrors of the 999. Whether it's to actually find a gap or whether it's just to rattle that driver is a different thing. But the 88 is starting to look a little more racy than the rest of the pack so far. He knows that he's got one more car to get through than Lavender does, so he's got to get around Lavender at some point if he wants a shot at Pilata. He can't just wait for Lavender to go for it.
Right up to the rear bumper of the 999. You don't want to try a side-by-side pass through Blanchimont in any car, let alone a touring car. Now he's going to back off to see maybe a bit of aero wash off that front car, drifts out slightly. But Pilata's now going to 0.4 of a second lead, but it all goes away again as Anda Eau Rouge, big dive by Mickey on the brakes, but not quite overlapped there yet, so he couldn't complete that pass.
Yeah, it was so tight, and now that's brought Herbst back a little bit closer. He's on the throttle early, but uses a bunch of extra distance. Mickey a little bit cleaner off the exit there, and he's going to stay nice in touch with Lavender. But that lap, Andrew Pilata delivering a really quick one.
34.219, that was 0.3 quicker than the driver behind, Caleb John Lavender. Look at them all run wide at the exit of 1. Hold your breath.
Car almost bottoms out. You grab all the curb and more, and as long as you keep any amount of the tire there at Radeon on the painted curb, you're okay. If you go inside of that, you get a cut penalty, and that's going to end your race real fast as far as being competitive with this top group goes.
All in line now, and again, when we do this later tonight, we're not going to have any light from the sky. It'll be pitch black nighttime. That's going to totally change the dynamic, and your braking zones are going to suddenly feel 1,000 feet shorter when you can't see them until you're there. So you have to kind of have a sense of feel around here as John Lavender runs a little bit wide, gets in the gravel trap. Eric Mickey has a look. Lavender defends into the braking zone.
And not only are we going to nighttime, but we are inverting somewhere between 10 and 20 cars, which could be a full field. So all these guys that had a disastrous race number 1 have an opportunity to come back with race number 2 if they get inverted potentially as high as the pole position. These guys are racing now for the win, though. Only a 0.5 second lead for Pilata over Lavender. They've got 2.5 laps left. And Mickey's goes for a big flat slide right there. The front end of that car not looking happy for the first time on this race, and you will experience some tire fall off. These cars are pretty hard on the front tires as their front wheel drive, all the work going through those 2 contact patches down to the ground, and it's close to the end of these 8-lap races. There's going to be some fall off on the front tires of these cars.
So now, coming to 2 laps to go, are we going to start to see Caleb John Lavender's playbook come out, or do you think he waits in the white flag? It's a 7-kilometer track with a lap time of over 2.5 minutes. I don't see how you show yourself or show what you're capable of until that final chicane. But if your move doesn't work, you're going to be out of chances.
I think these guys are pushing so hard that any amount of patience has to be gone at this point. You just got to take a position if you can. If it sparks one of those big TCR fights that we've seen in the past, so be it. These guys will all race hard for it, as they've actually, the 4 of them, gapped Dylan Broyles a little bit. But I really don't think this is the full-on Global MX-5 Cup race where you can wait to the very last second, be calculated about it, and just take the lead when you want. I think these guys are racing really, really hard, and they're going to take whatever chance they can get. Look at Herbst all the way up to the wall. Oh, man.
Well, I don't think it was any faster, but maybe a bit more comfortable in that particular situation. Now into the braking zone for La Source, up the outside of Eric Mickey, and they're not going to be able to make a pass there, but he's going to try, and he's going to run out way wide again. That's why we're not trying to bother enforcing track limits. There's not really a point. As as we head now down through Eau Rouge, 2 laps to go, as Herbst is putting pressure on Eric Mickey. Now, what are the options to work together? Do these cars accept bump drafts okay, or is that not really worth doing?
Yeah, they bump draft a little bit, but these guys are starting to lose touch a little bit with those top 2. It looks like Herbst is going to go for the 3rd spot. Oh, interesting. I just saw brake lights on Lavender's car. Did he brake a little bit to not get the run on Pilata?
Yeah, he did. He touched the brakes, and you know, sometimes in a real race, you'd test your brakes to make sure that you don't have any issues with your pedal. You got some pressure there before you go to the binders, but you don't have that here in iRacing, so that just had to be to kill off the momentum to avoid running side by side with the race leader into Lake Home.
And his choice to do that brought everybody back close together because he chose not to go anywhere with that extra speed that everybody else was drafting off of him. And now we are back to a 5-car battle for the lead. We have 1.5 laps left. And anything can happen, but what's interesting, that's the first indication I've had that Lavender is intentionally not passing Pilata.
And I'm not really sure what he's got up his sleeve, but I think we're going to see it here shortly. We're running out of time. Less than a lap and a half of racing left, about 10 kilometers of distance. And Caleb John Lavender has been so impressive this season on raw pace, but hasn't been to victory lane as many times as he would like, and he wants to get back there. Putting pressure on Andrew Pilata, who's been cool as a cucumber for this entire race, but now he's got 4 drivers swarming him as they come to the white flag this time. I have to imagine Pilata's going to have to make that car very, very wide.
And this is good points implications for Pilata right now if he can keep at least 1 car between himself and Eric Mickey, because Mickey's been so consistent. Pilata has had bad luck more often, so the more times that he can get cars between himself and Mickey, the better it is for his championship run. And look at that, all the way off the track and more through Blanchimont and now down into the chicane. Ooh, Mickey on the inside of Lavender.
And he took a look, and that's going to give him exposed to the 89 of Kyle Herbst. He goes up the inside in the final corner, but not quite enough overlap to make that pass stick. White flag in the air for TCR race number 1 here at Spa-Francorchamps. Andrew Pilata leads the way. Can he lead again for another 7 kilometers? Broyles had a look at Herbst for a moment, tucks back in as they run down the hill for the final time.
And look at where a gap just formed. It's between Lavender and Mickey, which is going to give Lavender every opportunity. If he can stay close and get a good run out of Radeon, he'll be able to draft up to Pilata, and maybe this is the lap where he decides, I'm not going to slow down, I'm going to take it this time. It's not super close, but watch this draft. He's just going to evaporate this time.
He's got a huge run. He's going to have to take it now. Pilata's going to make the car really wide. He's going to go to driver's right. Now, Caleb John Lavender with a huge run goes to the left. He's going to be side by side down the Kemmel Straight into the braking zone for Lake Home. The 999 noses ahead for a moment. He's going to go a little bit wide, going to save it. He'll get back on course, door to door. Pilata still on driver's right. He gets back by the 999. Car stopped on the left. That's Sarah Tessam's number 70. Now back to driver's right for the 180-degree right-hand corner, and Eric Mickey's just watching from behind as Herbst has a look at him.
Oh, so tight. They're going to touch just a little bit. But we just swapped directions so many times. Now Pilata's back onto the inside, and it's going to be really tough to hold the outside here, but he's going to do it. Lavender with a little bit of a run. Pilata leaves him just enough to come back onto the track.
No, they're not going to try 3 wide in Pujon. That would be an absolute death sentence. Oh, the 999's going to run wide in Pujon. Here comes Eric Mickey. Nowhere to go up the middle.
But Lavender's going to have the momentum. He loses the side-by-side just a moment. Look at Broyles coming around the outside of Herbst.
Oh, he's in deep. The 999's in deep. They're going to touch. Hip check for the 14. Herbst wants to take advantage of it, but Eric Mickey's on through. So Pilata back to 3rd place. Mickey to 2nd. He's in the catbird seat now as they run down to Stavelot up the inside. Door slams shut, does the 999.
And now we have one huge drafting opportunity left. Is Mickey in the catbird seat? Is he where you want to be? He's got the run. And look at Pilata's going to try to go with him. I imagine we may end up 3 wide down into the chicane, but Mickey might get it done faster. Look at this run he's got. They're hunting all over the place. He goes outside. That's a challenging move. He's going to try to pinch Lavender down.
Oh, there was just barely an inch there. Now through Blanchimont, full throttle. Way wide goes Eric Mickey defending the 999 on driver's left. Pilata up the middle. He has nowhere to go. Now to the right, into the braking zone for the chicane. Eric Mickey over. He blew it. He's 2 wide, 3 wide in the final corner. Pilata gets turned. Mickey comes out. He'll win at Spa.
Unbelievable. How did he pull that pass offer on the outside, let alone maintain that after getting in deep? into the chicane. He pulled the pass around the outside of Blanchimont to gain the lead, and then somehow defended it from 4 different cars attacking 4 different ways, and pulls off his 5th win of the season for the 88 car. Incredible last lap. I'd love to go back on board with Kyle Herbst and see how we ended up into the door of Andrew Pallotta, because Pallotta, unfortunately, from 1st to 5th on this final lap. And overhead here, you see Pallotta was in super, super deep.
I'm not sure if he ever got turned back enough to the right or to the left, rather.
And he may have actually gotten help from Lavender first to end up pushed across the nose. Yeah, it looks like Lavender gets into the back of him, potentially right there, keeps him floating the wrong way, and then Herbst ends up just kind of stuck. So that was absolutely no fault of the 89. And was it Broyles that ended up coming home 3rd? Is that what I saw?
Yeah, Broyles to 3rd. Here's a look. We have to take a look at this and dissect this again. Eric Mickey was in 2nd. We knew he'd have a shot. Look at this move to the right. And Caleb John Lavender, I think, defends in the right place. I think this is where you had to be because you get the better run out of the final corner if you can maintain overlap. But look, he almost pushes the 88 out over the edge. Ooh. Just enough space there as they come through Blanchimont. Look at this, right up against the curb. Fair play by all involved. Mickey runs wide to avoid the contact. The 14 looks up the middle. The door was not open there, though, so he had to back out, but Mickey was able to complete that pass. That was absolutely excellent racing by everybody here. Just a spectacular show of racecraft and car control for everybody up at the front until they get together. But this chicane is a pinch point, Tom, and it's always going to come down to a mess here when they get into this kind of situation.
For sure. And for me, I think I'm super impressed. I think Mickey was thinking ahead all the way to this final chicane when they were exiting Stavelot and saying, where do I want to be? I want to be on the inside for the chicane. I want to be inside for the braking zone. And that's why he chose driver's right all the way up to Blanchimont. He knew that he could potentially hold the outside there, but I don't think he expected to pull the pass off necessarily. He got the opportunity to do it. And then look at this run that Broyles almost had. He was really, really trying to go to the right of Herbst. You see that view. Now Mickey has basically just got to defend. Everyone hunting all over the place. Everyone completely deep on the brakes. Yikes, they're so tight. Wow. And then
what
right
a finish.
There is where it goes wrong.
How good is that?
I'm trying. Did Broyles come home 2nd or 3rd? I guess
P3.
Second,
P3 by a 10th of a second was the final result there. So here's a look at our race results, and we'll take a look at these before we jump to our second Grand Sport race of the night. But Tom, that was phenomenal stuff. I mean, I think we expected it to be good, but that was better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we're never disappointed by TCR, and I don't know that we expected to have one as exciting as what we ended on last week at VIR, but they sure enough delivered it, and now we get to do it all one more time, except a whole lot darker. And don't forget, we're inverting this field too, so Eric Mickey worked awful hard to get to the top on this one. He's going to start at the very back of all these guys for the next race.
All right, we'll be back in just a few minutes for the start of Grand Sport race number 2. The sun will set, the fog will burn away, and it's time to race at night in Spa-Francorchamps. We'll be right back. Welcome back live to Sim TV and Radenso Sports Car Challenge. It's time to race into the darkness at Spa-Francorchamps. This track is treacherous in the daytime, Tom, but at night, it's only going to be even more terrifying.
And these hills will be quiet otherwise, but they have flat sixes tearing around. You see the strobe of the headlights flashing up the back straightaway towards Blanchimont. And it's just so dark. We were just commenting, it depends on your screen almost as to how the contrast and how the light and the dark appear for each of these drivers. And you kind of see the solitary headlights around this circuit. The only place that's lit is what we're looking at right now, the front straightaway. Everywhere else, complete darkness except for the headlights of the car.
So we're going to do our best here to make sure that you can see what's going on. I'm kind of adjusting settings on the fly to make sure that that I can see what's going on and you can see what's going on. But we saw in race number 1, Tom, things were sort of, I don't want to say boring, because they weren't. We had some good racing, but things got sort of spread out. Are we expecting more of the same? Because I think now you're not racing your competitors, you're racing the track.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see more of the same, and I would say tense is a better word than boring, because it's so intense in the car. To have a race like we had between Paul Darling and Ken House-Seal, those two were putting in basically qualifying laps every single lap, and it was ebbing and flowing by tenths and hundredths the entire time. Neither of them had the opportunity to pass one another, and Paul Darling brought home his 5th win of the season on 11 races so far, but we're inverting the entire field, 18-car invert. So I would say maybe if we were starting the same way, yes, you're racing the track, but you're definitely racing each other, because Zach Buchanan, who had a disaster on the first corner, will start on pole after inverting the entire field.
So the Project 2 driver, he had issues on lap number 1. It's going to actually work out in his favor because he'll get to start right up front. And we know Zach is a pretty good race car driver. We actually saw him run the Mike's Hard Times Challenge the other night in Grid Life. He actually had a pretty solid night there. So we know he's a good race car driver, and starting up front away from all the chaos is going to be a good way to ensure that he has a half-decent result here. So he's going to be starting right up at the front. But Ken House-Seal and Paul Darling, 2 drivers I think we've got to keep our eye on, because they finished 1st and 2nd, and I don't think it would be wise of us to discount their ability to get back to the front.
No, they've done it before, and I could see them doing it again, because we do have the lowest car counts we've seen so far, 18 cars, and this is a big track with a lot of passing opportunity if you're creative, and both of those guys are both creative and ballsy at times. So I think we're going to see both of those guys make their way up through the field, potentially all the way back to the front even, because they do have such strong pace relative to other drivers. But again, starting 17th and 18th on this race, it's going to be really, really tough and they need to be patient. The biggest thing for me is you have time. 8 laps around Spa is a lot of laps, and 20 minutes is a lot of time to pick your places and take your time working through the field. I'm trying to look through the rest. I think somebody to watch is going to be Alex Barroso, who's always a guy to watch in race 2. Once again, he's going to start kind of the highest up of the fast drivers. Looking like it's going to be 7th on the grid for him. And he's going to have less work to do than the rest of those guys behind him.
But taking a look off the nose of these cars, Tom, the headlights are okay. You can sort of see what's going on. But I think the issue is if someone gets turned around sideways, it's going to be pretty tricky to tell, especially if they have contact that rips off their front bumper or breaks their headlights or taillights. You can't do that in iRacing. You can actually pretty easily damage the lighting on these cars. So if you have a guy that's got his front and rear shortened up and he's had crash damage, oh boy, if he gets turned around sideways, it's going to be like driving basically on a beach. In the middle of nowhere. It's going to be very, very dark, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We got 16 drivers lined up for this one as we get lined up for the start of Grand Sport race number 2 at round 6 of 8 in Radenso Sports Car Challenge. This is the final Grand Sport race of the night. Then we'll turn it back over to the TCR grid for our final race of the evening before we head to Road America, the National Park of Speed, in a couple weeks for round number 7.
So once again, Zach Buchanan inherits the pole after his race 1 did not go his way. Alongside him, Anthony Montello, who took himself out of race number 1, will start alongside on the front row. Finian D'Acunha starts 3rd. We'll see if he actually stays there, as he tends to drop to the back if he's towards the front sometimes. But again, guys to watch for me, Alex Barroso starting all the way up in 8th. After finishing 8th in the previous race, Riley Thompson starts ahead of a lot of the heavy hitters. And then you get back all the way to Ken Halseal and Paul Darling on the final row. Honestly, anything could happen at this one. And like you said, visibility is going to be a key, especially through Eau Rouge and Radeon for the first time. If you don't see the incident happening early, it could be much harder to evade than in the daylight.
All right, so you can see we're taking a look right now at the front straightaway, how dark it is as the field pulls away. Your starting lineup quickly scrolling along the bottom of the screen, but this is the brightest you're going to see your screen for the next 20 minutes because as soon as these cars get spread out, the addition of all that light will quickly go away when the cars spread out. So you better hope that your headlights are working. Better hope that you got your screen calibrated properly because it's going to get very, very dark. Field rolls through the final corner. Buchanan in the Project 2 Hertz. Number 40 comes out of the final corner. Green flag in the air. Radenso Sports Car Challenge action from Spa is underway into the darkness.
Whoa, and a huge spread out because Buchanan said, screw the green flag, I'm just going. So he tacked her up and dumped her out of the final corner, and he's going to lead big time into the final. Oh, and he loses it all by himself into the first corner. Goes around. Oh, headlights straightened up. Thompson gets collected. Oh, man. Gets through it okay, but Buchanan blows it after jumping the start to get an advantage.
Oh, that's not going to work. 4 wide? That is not going to work in the darkness here at Spa. 3 wide now. They've somewhat sorted it out. This is not going to work out, though. That's Jackson Robillard right at the front. The rest of the field working their way through. How did they do that? Oh, Halseal way out wide into the gravel almost. That was really dicey there. Oh, car in the wall right in front of him. That, I believe, was the 163 Atala Sadiq, maybe. As Anthony Montello leads the way to Lake Hope for the first time. Barroso on driver's right. He takes a look at the race lead.
Man, Barroso's already to the lead from 8th, and he capitalized just like we said he would, and he's going to just now start to drive away, which is bad news for guys like Halseal and Darling, who are still in 11th and 12th after that chaos down the front straightaway. They had cars to avoid. Look at Barroso blows it this time, and he runs wide, somehow saves it. Montello's back to the front.
That was dicey.
I have to wonder if the cooler night temps are causing these guys to lose sight of the fact that their tires aren't warm yet. It's very, very cool out here. Now side by side back for Barroso onto the inside. Kevin Zhu holding on to this one as well. And he's going to take a look after Montello gives space for Barroso. They're all running wide.
Wow, Barroso's way out there. There's a big bump. He's able to hang on to it, but Montello back up to driver's left. Now he's going to try to tuck back in line. He will, but that was almost disaster for those drivers as they headed down the hill.
Taking a look back, D'Cunha doing a good job hanging on with Robillard just behind. Chris Lapras has made huge progress, as has Kurt Krum, but the progress for Hausiel and Darling is slow. They are back in 10th and 12th, and there's a look at Thompson, who got collected, basically had nowhere to go when Buchanan spun in that first corner. The only contact was between those two cars, and Thompson's going to have damage on the front of that car. He's lucky to have headlights left, but didn't slow his roll too much. He's still running 8th.
Blanchimont for the first time. D'Cuna's going to run wide. So does Jackson Robillard. Gets back on course. D'Cunha leaves him the space into the braking zone for the first time. Robillard still has overlap. They're going to run in there side by side. Real tight. Maybe a bit of a hip check there from D'Cunha to Robillard. They get it sorted out, though. D'Cunha hangs on to 4th.
And now Lapras might have a run at Robillard. He's going to be on the outside for La Source, but he might be able to get that thing done. That 183 car started way back, I think, in 13th or 12th, so he's made good progress, tries the outside, and he's going to stay there. Now he's going to have a little bit more momentum down towards Eau Rouge. He's going to come back to the left of Robillard, and these guys battling for 5th right now, so this is top 5.
And looks like Lapras is going to have to back out, not quite alongside enough. Consider that a passing opportunity. Oh, and Radeon, there's a car wide. Trying to see who that was. Was it D'Cunha? Yes, it was.
D'Cunha. Yeah, and now Robillard's got a run on him. Looks like Montello also had a moment because Zhu has a run up to 2nd place, so he's going to clear him easily into the braking zone. Cuts back across.
Really tight field still here as we head into Lake Hope for the second time. Oh, no, there goes somebody. It's Lapras around.
I think he got in super deep and tried to go to the inside and got spun around, so that was his own doing, but he kind of threw a grenade into that whole battle, and that was D'Cunha that he collected.
D'Cunha actually took...
Thompson was in there too.
Yeah, D'Cunha took the access road to try to get through it. There's Paul Darling down to the inside of Evan Schickel. That is for 7th place, so Darling on up. He's not quite clear, though. Up front, Barroso now is a 2.5-second lead, making 3 seconds over Kevin Zhu. For 3rd place, though, Montello's holding up Robillard, Krum, Hausiel, and more.
Yeah, Montello doing a killer job right now to stay in the top 3. Started 2nd or 3rd, I think, and is holding his own and then some, putting these guys all over the place trying to get around him. And now Robillard gets a run up the inside, just onto the brakes deep, and they're going to go side by side into this fast right-hand sweeper. But now finally some measurable progress for Hausiel and Darling. They're 6th and 7th. They barely broke the top 10 on that first lap, so they took a lot longer to get the ball rolling versus Barroso, who's now 3.5 seconds up the field, up the track.
Krum with a big run. Oh, Robillard's off. They'll pull it back on course just in time. Here's Montello and Krum. This is for 4th.
This pass worked around the outside for Mickey in the previous race, but these Caymans are a lot tougher. Whoa, he barely keeps it on the track, and he sweeps around the outside. Montello bails out, and now look at how Seal's going to have a run. He's going to go with him, potentially around Krum, too. Does he go up the inside? No, thinks better of it. A big crash in the background. That's Thompson, I think.
Yes, it is Thompson. He's had a big issue. Oh, there's a ton of damage on that car. This is a big accident. Let's go back and see what happened. Going to be a vicious crash as he headed through Blanchimont. A dangerous fast corner. Here's a look. He just catches the inside curb, runs wide on the turf. Uh-oh. Oh, man.
Looks like it started to slide, and he caught it early, and the car just gripped up at the exact wrong time, and it tank slapped back into the wall hard. Ooh, that's a big hit.
That was a nasty impact for Riley Thompson. Not his night, neither was it Zach Buchanan's. Jumping back up to 3rd place, though. Robillard has it. He's on the podium as it stands, but Kurt Krum trying to deny him that opportunity as they head up through Radeon.
Robillard's had some good runs this season, but he hasn't been on the podium since Coda. He held on to a 3rd place there in the invert race. So they're going to battle behind Zhu. Side by side with Krum and Robillard. Krum's got the position right now, but he's not necessarily on the preferred line.
Oh, on the inside! Hausiel touches on his spins!
Around.
Oh, man. That's going to be huge. If he picks up a penalty for that, that could be a huge impact in the points.
Penalty aside, just the finishing order is going to be this is a disastrous night for Hausiel, as he already lost the championship lead just by the finishing order of race number 1, and now he's going to have a huge gap back to Paul Darling in points, and it's really tough to assign blame to that one, because
I don't think he'll get a penalty because he didn't really take anybody out. He just spun himself out essentially, so I don't think it will be.
I think Crum was just kind of get back on the preferred line and slam the door so that Hausil didn't get the run, but he already had the run, and just two guys going for the same space. But look, here at the front, it's a quiet night right now for Alex Barroso. 5 seconds lead over Kevin Zhu, who's still holding down second place over Robillard.
Oh, big bobble there by Kevin Zhu. That's a sketchy place to have the car step out, but he gathered it back up somehow. And now
he's still off the track just a little bit. Robillard's going to go up the inside, and that's a really tough place to hold the outside. It almost feels off camber, even though it's not, because that corner, the way it opens up, you want it to be flat, and it's almost not. Now side by side, 2x2, Robillard, Crum in front, and now Darling backs out of that one, tries to go alongside Zhu, but thinks better of it.
Side by side through Blanchimont. That ain't gonna work. No, there you go. There goes Kurt Crum sliding wildly at the exit of Blanchimont, back across the racetrack and into the concrete. Oh, man. Meanwhile, up the road, Zhu hangs on to third, Robillard to second. Here comes Paul Darling moving his way forward. That's for third place right now.
And Evan Schickel is now in this battle, as we've had so many dramas on that little pack. He came up from no man's land, is now threatening his top 5. Goes up the inside of Kevin Zhu, who drops from 2nd to 6th on 1 lap, or 5th on 1 lap. But good progress for Paul Darling, who's now 3rd place, and he's going to have at least half of this race distance to try to figure out a way by Robillard.
Looks like Kevin Zhu is going to hang on to 4th for now. They head up the uphill. Robillard, who Paul Darling grabbed a bit of grass there on the inside of Radillon, but it's going to help him gather some more speed up the crest of the hill. Next time by will be halfway through this race, as Robillard has to defend now from a charging Paul Darling, but I don't think he's going to have enough speed to do it.
Yeah, Darling's got a good run, and you can hold this outside. He's going to be deep on the brakes and try to sweep across the nose, and he's going to at least hold it there. Back to the inside now. This track changes direction so many times through this section that you can go side by side for almost half this lap, as they're going to continue side by side, bringing Zhu and Schickel back into the battle. Now finally does Robillard think better of going side by side and tucks in behind Darling.
The Darling 2nd, Robillard 3rd, Kevin Zhu 4th, Schickel 5th, but for Barroso, how about this? An 8.4 second lead. Just don't make a mistake and throw it away now, Tom.
And I think he's got every opportunity to just, he doesn't have to take any risks right now. That's the key, is he can just cruise. Even if he's a 2nd or 2 seconds a lap slower than Darling, Darling doesn't really have a lot of time with only half of this race left. And an 8-second gap, Barroso can really just chill.
Now we've got a couple laps into this race. Now I think we had a pretty wild battle. It's somewhat sorted out now, but I'm just so excited for the TCR race tonight. We've seen some epic battles in Grand Sport, but the TCR first race was already a nightmare from a driver's perspective, because they had so much to deal with. Now you throw the darkness into the equation, it gets that much harder. But Schickel putting more pressure on the back of Kevin Zhu as they head towards Blanchimont, flashing the lights. That's an enormous distraction for the lead car.
Yeah, it's like a strobe light in your rearview mirror. So Schickel means business right now. They're dropping tires. That's just how bad the visibility is. You would never see drivers dropping tires in the straightaways in daylight, but right now in the nighttime, they're almost dropping tires into the grass just down those straightaways. Whoa, Zhu super deep on the brakes, makes a mistake, and Schickel's going to tuck up on their side. That becomes the outside, going for a run onto the front straight. They're now half race distance, starting lap number 5 of 8.
Yeah, you saw, I think that was a distraction enough for Zhu. The flashing of the lights just makes you check your mirror, and the more you're looking up in the mirror, the less you're looking out the windshield, which you need to be doing at 140 miles an hour around Spa-Francorchamps at night. So just that little bit of a distraction can mean a whole lot. So Paul Darling now is in 2nd. The question is, I mean, it's an 8-second gap. Can he eat away at least some of that lead, maybe make Barroso nervous? I mean, I wouldn't say that it's totally done yet. We've seen Barroso make a couple mistakes in race 1. I wouldn't put it out of the question. I think it's very unlikely, but it's possible that Darling could at least eat up some of this lead.
Yeah, I think he'll certainly do that. He's already reeled in about 0.4 of a second on Barroso. But again, Barroso doesn't have to take any risks. At this point, mathematically, he can be 2 seconds a lap slower than Darling, and Darling will only just get to him, let alone get around him. So if I'm Barroso, I don't feel a lot of pressure right now. Zhu runs deep again and barely keeps it on the track at Lacombe. But looking back at the championship results, actually Alex Barroso is the only driver on the entire season to finish in the top 10 every single race. He's been very consistently inside the top 10, but has yet to win one, pretty much because Ken Hausiel and Paul Darling win everything at this point. So this is his opportunity to capitalize on that and take a win for the first time.
And all he's got to do is be calm, cool, and collected. You see, no light. Maybe this is another disadvantage that he has, is that he's got no other cars around him to illuminate the way, so he's only got the light here. Now, that might let you focus on your own race and not have any distractions, but it's a little bit darker for Barroso than it is for Robillard, who's following a couple seconds. See the difference. You can see about twice as far down the racetrack with a driver in front of you like Paul Darling.
It certainly helps, but in my experience in night racing, it takes 3 or 4 laps, but once you get your marks established mentally 3 or 4 laps in, you can almost go faster because there's so much less information hitting your eyes. You can just focus on your marks 100%. It's a little bit more of a peaceful kind of Zen experience rather than when you can see everything, you see just how fast you're going. You can get distracted by something on the hillside there or a flash of light there. At night, you can really kind of focus and turn out laps almost easier once you establish that rhythm. And at this point, Barroso's either in that rhythm or he's not. And you can see he's actually started to pull back out on Darling. 8.3 seconds now, the lead back after it was only 8 crossing the line last time. 3
laps to go for the race leader, and you're right, he has actually picked up a little bit of time, at least in the farther back sector. Here's Zoo and Lapras. That one got tight for a moment into the final chicane.
And Lapras is having a decent recovery after making that mistake. If we didn't go take another look at it, but I'm pretty sure it was just Lapras missing his braking point and kind of going bowling down into Lacombe. But he's still running in 6th position. That's not a bad place to be. It just kind of tells you how much attrition we've had in other places as drivers like Hausiel and Crum are barely in the top 10.
Yeah, and you talk about attrition. Well, we haven't seen quite the levels that we saw in either the first Grand Sport race or the first TCR race. We only have 2 drivers out, those being Tal Sadiq and Zach Buchanan. Everybody else is still out running. Maybe with some damage to a couple drivers, including saw Riley Thompson have an issue earlier, so that car missing parts and pieces, but he's still out there valiantly running for 12th position. I'm not sure he's having a whole lot of fun, but at least he's trying to get every point he can.
Sure, and he was 3rd in points, so every point matters at this point. As he's still running in the Simca Esports car, but he had not a whole lot of comfortable gap over Kurt Crum in the championship. They're a little bit out of touch of Hausiel and Darling, but again, Riley Thompson needs every point he can get to stay in front of guys like Kurt Crum, and then just behind them in the points, Alex Barroso, who's having a big points night right now.
Looking out the right rear of Jackson Robillard's car, you see out the window and the side, and also out from underneath the spoiler for Robillard. They head down towards Pujol. And Evan Schickel is the driver in behind Robillard. Then it's Kevin Zhu, Lapras, Montello, Hausiel, Finian D'Cunha, and Kurt Crum. D'Cunha having a very quiet night back there in ninth, but staying out of trouble for the most part.
Yeah, I had to avoid the incident that with Lapras and a couple of the other drivers, and that's what put him back there. But he's just behind Ken Hausiel, who's starting his march forward. If he gets around Montello right here, that's 7th. And every point counts for Hausiel too, because Darling's having a good race, and Hausiel can't afford to have too many of these races go away. Again, they get to drop 3 of the 16 rounds when the championship is all said and done, so he's got a little bit of wiggle room, but he's had incidents in other races. Generally makes his way back into the top 10, but those points few and far between sometimes when incidents like that happen.
Well, you think about our last 2 rounds of the season, in a couple of weeks we go to Road America, and then we go to Daytona. Neither of those tracks are at all technical, so that's going to bring everybody into the mix, and I don't think you can guarantee a Paul Darling-Ken Hausiel duo where they can just battle out amongst themselves. It's going to be a whole lot of race cars. Big dive for Lapras into the chicane, going to get all stopped in time. What a pass there as he goes to 5th on Kevin Zhu.
And beautifully defended, parked the car exactly where Kevin Zhu might have been able to come back at him and took that opportunity away. But Hausiel has disposed of Montello and leaves him racing with D'Cunha. So up to 7th for Hausiel, and now he's got to find 5 seconds on the road, 2 laps to do it to get up to Zhu. He might actually be able to close that gap to make his way as high as 6th.
Now D'Cunha putting pressure on the 24. They were pretty much dead even in the pace last time through.
Big slide for the 24 coming off that corner. And once these cars are up to temp, you can hold on to it, but still high risk. Up towards the front, Jackson Robillard just took a big ride through Eau Rouge and Radion, but he saved it. It's just barely holding off Evan Schickel for the final podium spot right now.
Riding on board with Schickel into the braking zone for Lacombe. So the Robillard Racing 98 nicely tucked in. Schickel using every bit of the racetrack plus a couple feet on the inside. There was a discussion all week about how the track limits were going to be assessed. No track limits on track out, but you have to be careful not to cut corners. I'm shocked that we haven't seen more people cut at the top of Radenso yet tonight, Tom. We have seen almost nobody make that mistake yet, and that's usually a common place to get yourself a slowdown.
Yeah, big time. I think that's an easy place to make that mistake because these cars go so light and you're basically not driving the car for a second. It's like hitting an ice patch almost. And from what we've seen, nobody's made that mistake. Now there's still 2 laps, so I'll do my one more time. But Barroso and Darling easily running away from this one. And Barroso's actually still the fastest car on the track. He's continuing to put a gap on Darling. So this battle for third is the best one, highest up so far. Just that gap between Robillard and Schickel. And Lapras is not too far behind.
Coming to the white flag next time by for Barroso. He's been absolutely just stretching that gap up now almost to 9 seconds. And this was the advantage of, where he started. He started at 8th, but drove through everybody else that was having issues and problems. And he just did such a nice job getting himself into first place and then taking advantage of it. We saw Zach Buchanan earlier tonight got the advantage of the invert and wasn't able to take advantage of it, Tom. And that's so important if you want to have good runs and good finishes. When you're given, you're given a Mike's Hard Lemon or Mike's Hard Lemons, you got to make lemonade, I guess. So I'm gonna use that in the grid life race. They'll be proud of me for that.
That was spectacularly well done.
All right, white flag for Alex Barroso, 9.1 second lead. This is the fight for third. Robillard and Schickel. Schickel out way wide, but he's got pace to catch Robillard. He was 1/10 faster. See if he can put that to good use this lap.
Schickel wants this spot so badly, and I'm also keeping an eye on the gap between Hausiel and Zhu because that's important points for Hausiel, and he cut about half of that distance. It's only about 2.5 seconds between them now. So we may get a race for 6th, but this race for 3rd is not over yet, I don't think.
Up the hill, that is Alex Barroso leading this race. Nope, that's actually Paul Darling. Barroso's so far out in front. Kemmel straight. Trying to see where. There's Barroso, and there's the 9-second gap all the way back to Paul Darling. And it just feels like an eternity to wait for the second place car. He's in a different zip code tonight, Tom. Do they have zip codes where are we? What country?
Belgium.
Belgium. I almost said Brazil.
No, one of those places.
The B country.
I was just looking at stats real quick, and actually Evan Schickel has won podium this year at VIR last weekend. Robillard has won back at COTA. So both of these guys fighting for their second podium on the season, and actually Robillard looks like he's putting some distance on Schickel this lap, so he might have found a little bit of rhythm and focused forward and is starting to drive away from the 33. Lapras is not any closer, but Hausiel has it's kind of stabilized back to Zhu as well, so not a whole lot of movement between these top 7-8 cars. Dirt flying.
Dakota was leaving a dirt trail there at the exit of No Name and was absolutely hauling it, trying to catch Anthony Montello. Not going to get there, I don't think, but still dragging tires off track as we go back to the Robillard and Schickel battle way up the road.
Out in the distance, and yeah, Robillard has put about a second over Evan Schickel. It was much tighter than this last time by. I don't think Schickel's even close enough within drafting distance to get any meaningful draft. But back at the front, Alex Barroso commanding moves to get to the front very, very early, was leading by turn 5 or 6 and has just brought it home. Not only smooth, but very, very fast for the 15 car. And he comes around to take the win on round 6, race number 12 of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge.
Winner, Alex Barroso. Paul Darling, feels like an eternity to get back to him, but he comes across the line in second. Robillard, podium. This week finally gets something out of what has been sort of a disastrous season in race number 2. He survives, he finishes in 3rd. Meanwhile, Fitting Dakuna and Montello, this is the battle for 9th place. It's going to come down to the final corner. Dakuna up the inside, Montello back in 10th. It looks like Dacuna's going to grab it. What an epic battle there to the end. And Dakuna takes care of it. What a race. You see the fireworks blasting in the background there, Tom, but beautiful. Barroso did it. He did it in dominating fashion. Trying to see if there's any other camera angle I can get that. I don't think there is, unfortunately, but we're going to have to look at it from a distance.
Now we know, firework cam for the future.
Yes. Every time we go to a racetrack with these, because I don't know we don't really have a list of all the ones that have them. Every time we go to one, I tell them to give me a firework cam for next time. But a beautiful night here in Spa-Francorchamps. Here is a look at your race results. Barroso, Darling, Robillard, your podium. Then Schickel-Lapra starting out the rest of your top 5. Zoo, Hausiel, Crum, Dacuna, and Montello for Lazy Rocket, rounding out the rest of your top 10. Disastrous night for Zach Buchanan, Tom. Both races just went horribly wrong in the first corner.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a huge congrats to Alex Barroso. First win on the championship, and that's going to give a big points advantage to Alex Barroso over the guys just in front of him, Kurt Crum and Riley Thompson, who both had a forgettable race number 2. So those guys are going to be very close together, leaving this round with 2 to go, and Barroso finally breaks through after a super consistent, always in the top 10. He's got a couple of top 5s and podiums, but that's the first P1 for that 15 car this year.
All right, well, we got one more race tonight to do. TCR race number 2. Don't go anywhere. You will not want to miss this race. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Back for the final race of the evening for SimTV and Radenso Sports Car Challenge, round number 6 of 8 at Spa-Francorchamps. We've seen excellent racing tonight from the Grand Sport Race 2 to TCR Race number 1, but now the touring car is going to go head-to-head again with the field inverted from the race finishers from race number 1. The top 10 have been flipped back around, so it's going to be Andrew Pilata on the front row. Tom, that works out almost perfectly for him.
Yeah, we were so excited about the race finish for race number 1. We were so excited to talk about how all that folded out, and we almost forgot to really touch on that Andrew Pilata dropped all the way to 10th with that unfortunate collection. He got moved kind of the wrong direction by Caleb John Lavender after everybody was just really deep on the brakes into that final corner, 5 cars going for 1 spot. And then he got collected even further by Kyle Herbst, who kind of got boxed out into Pilata and ended up so far off the track, awkwardly pointing the wrong direction at low speed, that he ended up in 10th. And we pulled the number 10 for the invert, and now that 14 car will start on the front row, the top spot for the second time tonight. He was the pole sitter for race number 1.
So drivers looking for redemption in the second race tonight. How about Sarah Tessum in her first race here in Radenso Sports Car Challenge? Her car and her race came to an abrupt halt right here at the exit of Stavelot. Had a horrible crash as the field basically got together and a bunch of cars went pinging and ponging off the walls. Christian Gritzko was one of them. And that was a pretty nasty impact, but they got the backup car out here, Tom. They're going to go for race number 2 in the darkness, and hopefully this time at least they won't be cringing as they see the car heading towards the wall this time. They won't be able to see it coming.
Yeah, what's unfortunate about the way that the invert has played out is between 10 and 20 cars get inverted, and we had 4 cars not finish because of those incidents. None of those guys get a chance to come back for race number 2 at the front. They're going to start right at the back where they finished. So again, Pilata with the pole, Max Loop for Andrew Chow, Christian Gritzko, and Tyler Jones. All of the drivers did not finish. Sarah Tessum and Brad Adams stayed out but had some pretty disastrous races, and all of those drivers will start 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. But alongside Andrew Pilata, Mr. Front Row, race 2 himself, Louis Alessi, I should say, will start on the front row once again in second place with that invert.
Tyler Jones looking for a better race 2 as well. His race ended very quickly in the first race of the evening, and I think Jones was pretty frustrated after the first race, so he's trying to get back on the horse and run it out here tonight. At least it's 7th in the warm-up here, which is almost over. Kyle Herbst, again, very capable of winning races. We've seen that before. Got kind of caught up in a collision in the final corner. Didn't quite get the finish he probably deserved. He was really one of those guys that could have won the race had things kind of worked out differently. But it's all going to come down to that final corner again, I imagine, Tom. But this time, you don't have the advantage of really being able to see what's going on. So it's going to be really dicey coming down to the very end as we look out the front of this 89. Just beyond the headlights, it's pitch black.
Yeah, and things didn't go quite as south for Herbst as they did for Pilata. He still managed fourth, and he was actually running fourth when the whole incident started. So he kind of came out right around even, although he didn't get to take advantage of that last corner like others did. Key guy being Eric Mickey, who came from third to win last race, kind of out of nowhere. That chaotic last couple of corners, Eric Mickey took the win. Caleb John Lavender, who was actually involved in the incident that crashed out Tyler Jones, finished second. Broyles was third. Herbst and Roman were the top five. So those guys will be starting at the back half of the top 10. And just looking at what the invert has done, big picture, Andrew Pilata on pole. Once again, he's absolutely the guy to beat because he's going to have plenty of time to get away from these guys. Louis Alessi second. Andrew Mickey is third. Ryan Christoph will be fun to watch from fourth. And then Mitch Welker will start fifth. Chris Harp was the first guy to not make the invert. He'll start 11th where he finished race number 1.
Also really curious about Christoph in fourth place in the number 46. It was one of the drivers that got sort of roughed up with the Welker and Gritsko machines. They were kind of involved in that big stack up there. So we'll see if he can turn things around for the second race of the night. So going to be really dicey here, Tom, as we go for another 8 laps to round out round number 6. We head to Road America in a couple weeks for our penultimate round, and then to Daytona, which will be our only other night race on the season. The season finale will happen under the lights at Daytona International Speedway. And, well, at least they'll have lights there of some sort as we head through Blanchimont here, the last time under pacing conditions here before we turn them loose.
I think you're absolutely right. The 46 car Christoph will be fun to watch this one. And Brad Adams, who has had just bad race one after bad race run this season in Radenso Sports Car Challenge, he's gridded up in 14th, and he's a racing machine, so he'll be fun to watch from just outside the top 10, looking at a very well-lit track from that further back row.
That's Tyler Jones in the number 29 as we come out of the final corner. Pilata on pole, see if he can hang on to it. Waiting for the green flag to drop. There it is. Green flag flies, racing for the final time in round number 6 in Radenso Sports Car Challenge at Spa-Francorchamps. 3 wide as they run down into turn number 1. That's Christoph up the middle, and he's going to go to third. Make it second as he goes around the outside of Andrew Mickey. Can he hang on to it? He's going to run way out wide. So does Elias Roman. Now they got to get funneled back down before the run to Eau Rouge. There's Welker. He's moved up into fourth as they head down the hill.
Yeah, a huge run for Roman. Christoph and Roman are the big movers this time. They're still side by side into Eau Rouge, and this is where it went poorly before. Christoph comes across the nose and will take second over Mickey. That's Andrew Mickey. Another good starter for Herbst. Look at them, just through. Hopefully no one got a corner cut because it's really bad news. A corner cut on lap 1 is a race ender, but they're still fanned out. Almost 3 wide, 1 car, 2 tires in the grass. That's Broyles. He got a slowdown and a big crash. That's Brad Adams and Sarah Tessum both go around.
Oh, up front, Andrew Mickey's around, and he's caught another car with him. That's Welker. He's going to slide off into the gravel as well. Trouble there for some of the race leaders, but Gritsko's in it as well. He's tangled as well as Sarah Tessum. Uh-oh, a big mess on the back straightaway, guys. Oh, man.
And that was two separate incidents that I have to imagine. I think the root cause of all that was Dylan Broyles serving a slowdown. He cut Eau Rouge and Radion, and drivers fanning out all over the place. The first one to go south was Brad Adams and Sarah Tessum. Sarah moved and took Brad with her.
Gritsko got caught at the end of that. That's what had that. Oh, and then it was also Tyler Jones got turned back across the track.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Jones.
And then we have to go back and see what happened to Welker because he was one of the drivers involved in the incident up the road with, I believe that was Andrew Mickey. And here's a look. Oh, they're going to go behind the trees here. I think, what does Welker just crowd up just a little bit? There was still some space, but not quite. No, it was Mickey that crowded Welker.
Yep. So mostly 2-car incidents that were almost solitary between them. Chaos, complete chaos, but the top four are pretty close together still. We may get a good race yet, although Andrew Pilata is in a perfect position to run away if he can put in a couple good laps, break the draft of Christoph, and then Christoph's just got to worry about Roman and Herbst, and Herbst is one of the fast cars. He's going to be looking to get all the way up to P2. I don't know that any of them will catch Pilata at this point, though. Pilata's going to be tough.
Now, Pilata's got a big enough lead where he could break away from the draft, but Christoph is still in it for now. But Herbst and Elias Roman are as important to this lead group as Christoph is. If all 3 of these cars work together, that'd make easy work catching back up to the 14. But I think Kyle Herbst, he put some pressure on. Maybe there was a touch there as they headed into the final corner. They complete lap number 1. It was a wild one again. Some drivers out of the race, but Pilata now has an 0.8 of a second lead. We'll see if he can hang on to it. Because if he can clear Christoph and drive away without any draft, it's game over. He'll win this race.
Couldn't agree more. And then there's a big gap back to now Eric Mickey, as Andrew Mickey had that incident with Welker, who actually rallied pretty well. He's in 6th in the purple Vantage Esports car there on the back of your frame. So he took that ride, but it wasn't a race-ending ride for him as it was for so many others. Also, Dylan Broyles, who got that cut penalty, was on far driver's right, serving it while all of that chaos unfolded. He's 10th, so he's going to be trying to charge back up, as is the car just in front of him, the Lavender.
Here is Mitch Welker having a look at Eric Mickey. Goes to driver's left. He'll have a look towards Lacombe. And the tires are now somewhat up to temperature, maybe not all the way optimal yet, as Mickey tries to go around Welker goes around the outside. A little bit of a touch there, getting physical, elbows out. Welker's through to 5th.
That outside move through Lacombe works really well, especially in these TCR cars. And there's a look at Chris Harp, who started 11th, and he's 12th right now, so he might have slowed down to try to get through all of that chaos without damage. But back at the front, Christoph's doing a really great job of staying in touch with Pilata. He's actually picked up a couple tenths, and Pilata is now only half second up the road. I may have spoke too soon. We may still get a 4-way battle for the lead.
I think we might, as they come through the trees here in the beautiful darkness of Spa-Francorchamps here. But at the front, Pilata has a 0.6 of a second lead, but it was larger than this a lap ago. I think Christoph's got plenty of pace to get back up towards the front. Here's Caleb John Lavender. You see Welker and Eric Mickey fighting again for 5th. I don't think Eric's quite done yet. We know how fast he is. I think he's a little out of position here. I think he should be up a few spots, so I'm definitely sure he's not done with the 76 yet.
I almost wonder if he was another driver that got a cut penalty or something, because through Eau Rouge the first time we had a whole lot of cars that looked like they were flirting with left of center of that curb, and that's what gets you a cut penalty. Looking at Eric Mickey, he did start 10th and he's up to 5th, so he's made progress, but not as much as the other drivers.
As a look at Blanchimont, not really a safe place to make a pass, at least not on lap number 2 of 8. Maybe on lap 8 of 8 we'll see that move, not here, not now. Pilata out in front by 0.6 of a second. Christoph closes in the braking zone, super aggressive on the brakes, and look at how much time he made up there, Tom.
Yeah, and the big question is which one of these 3 cars has the best chance of catching Pilata? You want that car in the front, because that car is going to pull you up to Pilata with the draft. If it's Christoph, that's great. If it's Roman or Herbst, Christoph's almost better off letting them by in a position where they don't get, they don't lose much time. But honestly, it looks like Christoph's got plenty of pace in that car right now, especially with the draft. He's closing in on Pilata in certain sections of this track, just on merit of his own pace.
Through Eau Rouge this time for the 3rd time. That's Pilata leading the way by 0.7 over Christoph. It's all about the run up through Radenso, and a good line for Christoph. Just out of the range where he can kind of lift and stay in behind, like we saw Caleb John Lavender doing in race number 1. But look at this gain now, 0.5. It's going to come down to 0.4 by the end of the straight, and now he's really pretty much in lockstep with the 14, and he should be pretty comfortable here as long as he's got equal pace at the 14, which it looks like he does.
Whoa, he closed up big time under the brakes, but he cut that big time into the grass, and that's going to slow him down just a little bit. Now Roman's going to try for the over-under, gets the run up the inside of Christoph, and they've got to get this done really fast if they want to battle, because look at that, it's already up to a 2nd lead for Pilata. Christoph back to 4th, and now Roman's got to take these guys with him if he wants to bring them up to Pilata. Otherwise, Pilata's now got another opportunity to start to run away.
Yeah, it's a little clumsy for Christoph through Lacombe, but that gave up nearly half a second as Roman and Herbst got on by, so move Christoph back to 4th. In the background, you see Welker and Eric Mickey continuing their battle. Then it's Caleb John Lavender, Louis Alessi, then it's Benson Ty, Dylan Broyles. These two having a good fight back here. This is for 9th.
Welker doing an awesome job. Again, this is his first weekend running, or weeknight running in the TCR category. Now Broyles with a run on Lavender. Nope, it's Ty. They're going to go side by side into the next corner. Broyles tucks back in, but I was saying Welker doing a great job defending off often the guy to beat, Eric Mickey. This is only for 5th right now.
Back up to 2nd. They've lost now 1.3 seconds. Whoa, there goes Herbst way outside track limits. Pilata is pretty much free of the draft, so the only way that these guys are going to catch him is by working together. Is that something we can see? I haven't really seen that be a legitimate strategy. I don't think you can really work together here like you can in a stock car in a plate track. We might have to see it happen here out of necessity.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's going to be really tough to work together in a way that actually benefits pulling up to the leader. Honestly, the only way they can work together is to stop racing each other and just kind of stay in lockstep. Any of these guys have been at some point fast enough to do that. You saw Christoph was fast enough for a little while, but didn't have the consistency, and now it's a question of whether or not Roman and Herbst can stay out of each other's way to do that and actually be fast enough. That gap is stabilized now at 1.3 seconds, but this race for ninth is great between Broyles, Ty, and Lupfer.
3 wide for a moment. Lupfer backs out and has another look at him down into the first corner. La Source pulls tight, but the 2 on the outside will carry some more speed at corner exit.
You got 3 different lines for over-undering, but look at this. Christoph's back around Herbst. Christoph really has a lot of pace in that 46 car tonight, but now it's 2 seconds up to Pallotta. Pallotta's free and clear to do what Barroso did in race 2, and that's just put his head down, turn qualifying laps peacefully into the night.
In the background, you see these 2 running side by side. That's Christoph and Herbst for now, but look in the background, Lupfer and Broyles, they're still side by side. It looks like, oh, here they come. There's another car that was tucked in there. I didn't even see that. That was Lupfer. It was Benson Ty we were looking at, and Ty's going to run a little bit wide, a bit clumsy there, and that's going to leave Lupfer with an opportunity to swing back to driver's left. He does.
Broyles is going to try to go with him. It goes for the over-under this time, so they were almost 3 wide for a second. They're going to go side by side now down into this long, slow radius right-hander and single file now for the first time in about half a lap. But Lupfer, the big gain there, he was behind both of these drivers, clears them both, and now checks out, starts to march forward. The next driver on his radar is Louis Alessi, about 4 seconds up the road.
Broyles is not done with Benson Ty just yet, still in behind. Ooh, that was a clumsy corner entry for the 503. That's going to open the door for Broyles to go up the inside. That's going to get tight. It's a pinch point on corner exit. All the way out over the edge of the curb goes Benson Ty. But he'll have drivers right now for the next right-hand corner. Keeps it in line. So Elias Roman is now in second place in the number 99. He's lost 2 seconds to Andrew Pallotta. But now it's head down. If you can catch him on raw pace, this is the time to show it. Christoph and Herbst battling for the podium spot.
And that would be an impressive drive if Roman can pull that off in the 99, but Christoph and Herbst have almost given up on that, and they're just racing each other now for third. Christoph doing everything he can to keep Herbst behind, but Herbst has the advantage of the draft right now and the extra headlights of Christoph in front of him to see just that little bit more, and that's a big deal.
Into the braking zone now. You see Roman and Pallotta both in this shot. I'm keeping an eye on lap times now to see where Roman's going to be. A bit of a checkup for Christoph at corner exit. Across the line that time, Pallotta was 9/10 of a second faster than Elias Roman. And Roman's got to pick it up. They're all charging into La Source very, very hard. Meanwhile, Benson Ty and Dylan Broyles, I said that battle wasn't done yet. Well, it's not. Here they come into turn number 1.
Broyles deep on the brakes. He's not going to be able to go anywhere with it, but tries for the over-under. He baited Ty into that deep braking, and now he gets to run up the wrong side. Oh, they touched. That was a really weird move down the straightaway, but I think that's just going to be enough. No, they're still going to go side by side into Eau Rouge. Super risky.
Oh,
does Ty lift? No.
Oh, he's gonna understeer off the course here. Yeah. Well, he actually might have kept it on. But how about side by side for the last step on the podium? Herbst and Christoph still continue to fight.
Still amazing to me that outside line works better than the inside when attacking or defending into Lacombe. So now Herbst goes to the inside. Not the inside, to the point in third position. These guys have lost about 1.3 seconds to Roman, so they're not fully out of drafting distance, but they're pretty close to it. They got to settle this really quickly, or they're definitely just racing for third. And
they're losing time to Mitchell Welker and Eric Mickey. Mickey ran a 2:33.0 last time, which was the quickest lap on the racetrack, with the exception of Caleb John Lavender, who's right behind them, are at a 2:32.9. So we're seeing lap times be incredibly quick for this 5, 6, and 7 group, and they're very quickly encroaching on third and fourth place, Herbst and Christoph.
Looks like Herbst has actually now gapped Christoph just a little bit, so that section of tracks they just left in Sector 2 is the section that Christoph may be struggling with just a little bit consistency-wise, and now Herbst is going to try to set his sights on Roman. He's actually closing in pretty quickly, it looks like. He's only 7, 8 tenths back of Roman now all of a sudden, so he's made quick work of that gap and continues to close.
And Pallotta is out front with really no pressure right now. He's not feeling like he's got to go breaking deeper into the corners. He's able to set his own pace, and right now his pace is plenty fast enough to hang on to this lead and grab a race win here tonight. He was gifted that pole with the fortune of the field invert, and he's certainly taking advantage of it right now.
And he really needed that because, again, he led the entire race one. He just caught up in that silly kind of awkward incident in the last chicane, got pointed in the wrong direction, and that's what ended up putting him 10th to inherit the pole for race 2. So he really deserved the opportunity to come back for race 2 the way this is playing out for him, and he's taking advantage of it fully.
3 laps to go this time for the race leader. And lap 6 of 8. And still slower 3/10 that time for Elias Roman. But Kyle Herbst was almost a second faster than the race leader. So if he can get by Elias Roman right now, he's got time to get there, Tom. But he's got to pass this 99 this lap and right now. And I think looking down at the times, he's got to know that, because if he spends any time behind Elias Roman, game over and give the trophy to Pilata.
Exactly, and he can't take too much time making the pass either. He's got to get it done very quick and clean and not lose a lot of time doing it. And part of me wonders, even if Pilata's just taking care of his car a little bit, I think that's unlikely, but it's possible. As now Herbst is going to get the opportunity to maybe make the run around the outside that works so well down into Lacombe here. He's going to go for it. Goes to the outside. He's deeper on the brakes, and they're fully side by side at turn in.
Oh, the 99's going to push wide. He's still at overlap for a moment. Now gets re-cleared, but every time they have this battle, it's letting Pilata slip farther and farther away. Herbst putting pressure on the 99. He's got to get through by the end of this middle sector. Now he's 3 seconds back, so now he's mathematically out unless he can pick up more time than a second a lap. That's really a tall task to do. So just like that, his chances of winning this race are dwindling to 0.
Yeah, a nearly impossible task, and look who's back in the battle too. It's Christoph, and he doesn't really care about whether Pilata's getting away or not, because he already is on his second life of this race. He was out of it at one point and now was brought back into it. So if he can take a pass, he's going to go for it.
Herbst right to the rear bumper of Elias Roman. Now I think it's just a fight for second they're focused on. I don't think there's really much of a chance of catching Pilata, so now you give up that chance, and now Elias Roman's goal is completely different. It's not help facilitate this pass and catch the leader. It's defending for everything he's worth, and I think we're about to see that.
Looks like Christoph is really struggling with front grip on that car. He's just not getting the car on the line that it needs to be. Whoa, a touch on entry from Herbst. That's really, really tight. We have these 2-3 car battles shaping up between Roman, Herbst, and Christoph, and then for 5th, Welker, Mickey, and Lavender. That one is way not done yet. They're super tight together. But Herbst and Roman for 2nd is the most exciting one right now. Herbst hunting. We've seen the outside actually work if he can get there. Thinks about it.
Full throttle here. No lift. Stay wide now. He can't come back on. Good. That was a good call there. You can't run wide and force your way back on. He was looking at, he thought he was going to make it pass in the run-up area. You can't do that. Well, I guess you can pass out there, but you can't force your way back on. He was about to hit the grass, so he had to back out. Well done. That was a fast decision to have to make, but he did it. 2 laps to go for the race leader, Andrew Pilata, for Elias Roman. Now 2 laps to defend. 2nd place.
Looks to the outside. There's not a car width there until Roman turns in, but an over-under for Herbst. He's got a little bit of a run. Now going into Eau Rouge side by side is not what you want to do, even when you're this desperate, but he may try. He's looking just a little bit left, trying to fill the mirrors of the 99, but he's going to stay tucked in. Whoa, big setup for Roman, and that's a good run,
yeah.
But the draft is going to negate it.
When you're in that position, it's almost smarter to back out well before you get to Eau Rouge and then get the run-up coming into it. I don't like entering the corner that close because you get some aero watch, you get some aero push, and you end up losing time. But now he's going to get a bit of a run here, go to driver's left, and try to make the pass.
Yeah, there's almost nowhere to go with it either. So you saw he just basically didn't have any place to have a run, and now Christoph's back in this one once again.
There's another 3-car group behind us. Welker, Mickey, and Caleb John Lavender. They can come crash this party. Still got about 10, 11 kilometers left in this race.
Yeah, just under 2 laps to go, and now Herbst deep on the brakes once again. All of this, honestly, Roman is holding this entire field up big time, and he doesn't care because he's still got the position, but that's fully brought, I would say at this point, Welker, Mickey, and Lavender are pretty much into this battle. They're less than a second back of Christoph.
Into Pujol now for the 7th time. Roman doing a good job defending. Pilata is gone. 4 seconds up the road. No matter now. Roman. Kyle Herbst swings back to the left to have a little bit of an open run down into, I believe they call this section campus as they work their way through now. Setting up, and now I think Herbst is, now that the leader's gone, now I think you stay here. I think you stay in 3rd place until we come to that last corner. But the issue is he's got to have a hungry group of 4 drivers. Oh, he's in the gravel! Whoa. Holy cow, that was wide.
All the way out to the tires, and now Christoph's going to have a pretty good run on him. I don't know that they'll be able to do anything with it, but that's going to put a hold on this battle for second, which means that battle for fifth is getting ever closer. Still super impressed with Welker, Mickey, and Lavender, and they've done what's very important. They're not fighting amongst each other, and whether that's just by merit that they're all kind of running the same speed, or if they've chosen to not do that battle. Here comes Herbst. Looks to the inside, almost gets a run, but it's not going to get it done, and pinches his entry to make sure he's filling the mirrors. Now this is fully a 6-car battle for second. We're TCR in this one more time on the white flag.
It's not for the race win, but it is for podium spots. Second and third still up for grabs. 7 kilometers left for Pilata. He's already down and through La Source. Meanwhile, Roman, Herbst battling hard. Christoph up the inside, that's for third. Gonna have overlap here. Now the run down to Eau Rouge for the final time. Cameras flashing, the sparks are flying, and it's all elbows out racing from here to the end. Elias Roman, Kyle Herbst, Christoph, Welker, Mickey, Caleb John Lavender, the run down through Eau Rouge.
And this time, Herbst gets a good run through Eau Rouge. He's got a little bit of space to go somewhere with it. He's very, very close. I've officially leaned forward, and I think as soon as these guys go side by side, this is a full 6-car battle. There's the gap up to Pilata.
Oh, they touch. Bit of a hip check there. Side by side, trading paint. They're going to trade carbon again. Banging and bumping into the braking zone, slipping and sliding. Roman's going to run him wide.
And now look at this. Welker is attacking Christoph. He's going to get a run around the outside of Herbst potentially. They're still side by side, and he's going to clear Christoph stuck on the outside. Lavender also coming up around Mickey. So they're going to go 2 by 2, and that's a grace save for Roman and Herbst. Welker still hasn't gotten it done. They're going to touch almost at the apex. Whoa, so tight. Now Christoph gets the line back.
It's a hard pass to make, but if he can use every bit of the racetrack all the way to the tires, he might have a run down into Pujo, and that would be a heck of a power move. I think they're going to give up this battle for second and third, though, with Roman and Herbst able to clear them by a couple seconds. Christoph with a big dive up the inside, roughs up Welker, sends him out of the way. That's a true touring car move. Whoa, Christoph gets help from Lavender, turns him sideways. Oh, look at Welker, big over the bump there. That's the one I was talking about.
Man, these guys battling for fourth place right now. Roman and Herbst, that one's not done, but it's on hold. Look at that huge slide from Mickey. He's a good decision maker. He just needs to bring this one home at this point, and Christoph still holds the point. He's willing to do anything at this point to take that fourth place finish. Everyone's tried something on him, and none of them have been able to make it work, and now Lavender is the guy to try something. This is the final lap with 1 passing zone left. Are they going to get a run? What's happening with Herbst and Roman?
Not a lot. They're still nose to tail by 3/10, but it's going to close very quickly into the braking zone. Roman and Herbst into the braking zone now for the final time through Blanchimont. Full throttle. 4 cars line and start behind from the 4th position. Checkered flag for Pilata. No action up front, but how about for second? Big dive up the inside. There's a bit of a block there by Elias Roman. Meanwhile, behind them, slipping and sliding. Way wide goes Ryan Christoph, and now a cut for Caleb John Lavender. He has to come to a stop. Eric Mickey comes out of the final corner. He will be 4th. Welker in 5th. Lavender and Christoph coming to the checkers now in 6th and I believe 7th. What happened there, Tom? That was wild.
I was watching it in the background, and I can't tell which car was which, but someone was making big moves. I think it was Lavender, and Christoph ended up getting collected from behind as Lavender was hunting. I'm not going to say any more than that until we go back and watch it. Now Brad Adams across the line salvages what was a disastrous lap 1 once again. Come across the line. Ooh.
Let's go back and have a look at how this all happened.
So watch Lavender hunts to the inside for just a second and then cuts back. He's super deep on the brakes, loses the back end, and just clocks Christoph actually on the side. So he was actually overlapping, but the momentum of the rear end of the car didn't agree with when he hit the brakes, and he just kind of got carried into the side of Christoph, who was on a different trajectory. But I'm going to put that one on Lavender from my commentator's box here.
Yeah, just an easy mistake to do, but Andrew Pilata gets it done. What a drive for Pilata. Just went out there and drove away. But for Roman and Herbst, I got to give Roman credit. He held off Kyle Herbst there. Didn't crack under the pressure. Comes home P2.
Yeah, and all those guys effectively in the race have the same pace when you get them in a big pack like that. Any of more or less the top 10, we've seen all of them battle for the wins at some point or another. So it's super impressive, for the most part, clean until the last corner race. Some really, really classic touring car argy-bargy through the middle of that last lap, and then disaster for some others like Pilata and I would say even Mickey, who was running as low as 8th and 9th that race, salvaged it up to 4th. Once again, Mr. Consistency puts it up towards the top 5.
We're going to jump the break. We'll talk to our race winners and more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back live to Radenso Sports Car Challenge and Sim TV here now with one of our race winners from Grand Sport, Alex Barroso, in the number 15. Alex, well done victory tonight, but Spa is a challenging proposition, especially in the darkness. Take me through your race tonight, your race win, and driving off pretty much into the pitch black confines of the forest here in Belgium.
Yeah, sorry I made that one a little bit boring. I knew that Paul and Ken really had some serious pace tonight, and I just wasn't, first race especially, I wasn't really feeling it. So, I saw a chance, tried to take off as soon as I could, was a little bit aggressive with Kevin and the other one, so I felt a little bit bad about that, but tried to take off, and I figured I'd be seeing Paul or Ken rolling up in the relative real quick, but it just never happened. As I kept pushing, and for some reason I really wanted to get a 29, and I thought it was going to be really irresponsible if I threw away that win getting a 29. So it was good though. It was good. Wish it would have been a little bit more entertaining, but glad to get a win.
We head to Road America and then to Daytona for the final 2 rounds of the season, neither of which are very technical racetracks. They're very fast, very point and shoot. Your thoughts on those last 2 races, and do you see yourself grabbing another victory before the season's out?
I don't know about that. It's going to take a lot of practice to get that, but those are definitely going to be a little bit trickier in the TCR, in my opinion. Not TCR, sorry, the GT4. I was really impressed with how happy the GT4 was at Spa, being so smooth. The car really doesn't like the curbs or elevation change, and so it was actually really friendly at Spa compared to somewhere like Road Atlanta. And I feel like the American tracks, even Road America with a little bit of curbage, some more bumps, it's going to be a lot more changeable, and people are going to be making a lot more mistakes. Daytona's got some funky braking zones too, so I see those tracks actually being a little bit more tricky, and might have some different results there. So looking forward to it.
All right, Alex. Hey, congratulations on your race win. We'll see you in a couple weeks at Road America.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
We got now to Paul Darling, who was our race 1 Grand Sport winner in the number 155. Paul, a good battle there with Ken Ausilia. Kept him behind you, but he kept you honest. Walk us through that battle, and how tense was it with Ken right on your heels there and another group of cars not too much farther back if there was an issue?
I think it's always intense when you've got someone as fast as Ken directly behind you. I don't think I ever got over a second on the relative on him. So it's a very intense race in the cockpit. Unfortunately, not as exciting outside, I think.
Obviously tonight, race 2 is in the dark, and that was something new, because again, we have one more night race on the schedule. It'll be at Daytona with a little bit of lighting. How difficult was it out there tonight? How much adjusting did you have to do to find new braking points and really see what you were doing out there?
I actually found I was able to brake later in practice than I had in the previous session. The track felt faster. The lap times were roughly around the same. The lights with everyone around made it very interesting, especially if anyone chose to use the flash. Just turned into a slideshow then. But I love racing. It's a lot of fun.
Paul, congratulations on your race win tonight. 2 rounds left. We'll see if you can hang up on top of those point standings and walk out of here with a championship. Congratulations, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on now to a couple of our TCR winners tonight. It was Eric Mickey in race number 1 that came home with the race win, and it was in spectacular fashion, a pass through Blanchiment on the outside. It all worked out somehow. Eric, take us through the last sector of race number 1.
Yeah, that was nuts. First, sorry about my voice here. I'm a little sick right now, but yeah, that was a crazy last lap. Everyone was all over the place, and just first, everyone involved there deserves credit for allowing it to happen that way, rather than, because if any one of us was 5% more aggressive or more greedy, that would have all gone really bad really quick. So the fact that you came out of that with the way that it did, it was probably the best it could have gone. But yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good run coming out of that last right-hander heading up to the kink, and I was ready to go whichever direction he didn't. And, with the track limit situation that we got, I got to give Caleb the credit for not holding it to the line there and forcing a crash, basically, for me to complete that pass and make that happen. So I just did my best to give him room and get in around there the best I could, and then screwed up on the brakes getting into the chicane. But luckily, like, nobody else was everybody was racing each other, so they couldn't just focus on capitalizing on that.
So you came into the night leading Andrew Pallotta by, it looks like by 30 points. So the question becomes now, with 2 rounds left at Road America and Daytona, what's the plan between you and Pallotta? I mean, you're obviously leading, but Pallotta just won the race too as well. So we know he's fast. What's the goal for the next 2 weeks? I mean, you're obviously winning races, so do you change anything or do you just keep doing what you're doing?
I just got to keep approaching it the way that I am and hope that, things work out. Next week or next race is Road America. That's going to be another track where it's going to be hard to get away from each other. And then Daytona, it's going to be even more so. So it's just a matter of just keeping the same mentality that I've had all season of trying to keep the car clean, valuing a decent finish over being greedy and trying to take more, which is exactly what I did in race 2 tonight and picked up 3 or 4 spots in the last couple corners because I was like, I'm okay with 7th, but if things go sideways like they did in race 1, I might pick up a few. So that just kind of went that way. It's the way that I've gone after the whole season. So it's just a matter of, I think, which one of us is able to put the more solid final 4 races together.
Eric, congratulations on another race win tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you at the National Park of Speed in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Great job as always, guys, tonight.
Thanks, Eric. We'll see you later. Last but not least, we got Andrew Pallotta, who won race number 2 in dominant fashion. He just drove away. Andrew, walk us through obviously the end of race 1. Unfortunate, but it puts you in a great spot for race 2. Where you're able to just drive away. Take us through your night.
So I pretty much got in the car and drove it around for 8 laps. And that's pretty much where that story starts and ends, I think. Thankfully, I was able to break away from the pack enough, and kind of like the same thing with VIR. And as long as I get outside of the draft, I knew I could at least have the pace on my own. Once other people start getting in the picture, I'm much weaker at that. So I'm comfortable out by myself. So as long as I can keep that up, then I'm good. So that was pretty much what I had to rely on.
Tom, anything for Andrew?
Yeah, so we managed in all the chaos. We were so excited about the finish. We didn't even really notice that you dropped all the way to 10th to end up with that invert. But I'm curious, have you done the math on the drops for the season, knowing that you have 3 drops and have had a little worse luck on races than Eric Mickey, who is your closest competitor? I'd say, is there any different approach to know if you have looked at the drops, whether or not you need to have clean races for the rest of the season, or do you just want to hold your hands over the ears and I don't want to know? Because that's how I am.
I think it's going to be the latter. There was no strategy involved in a 10th place finish at the end of the first one. It was more that I got a cut penalty coming back onto the track and didn't realize it, and then didn't serve it, and it pushed me down. So it just so happened that got me to start on pole for the second race, which, hey, that's good for me. So I don't know about drops or anything like that. I'm just going to try to keep pushing and hope I can try to catch up to Eric.
Well, a great night of racing there, Andrew. Obviously for you in race number 2, not very entertaining for the broadcast side of things, but it's a race win either way. Congratulations, and good luck to you in the continuation of your championship fight in a couple weeks at Road America.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll make it more exciting next time.
All right, Andrew. We'll look forward. I'm going to hold you to it at Road America. We'll see you later.
See ya.
All right. And Tom, that's going to wrap things up here. It's been a long night, but we finally conclude things at Spa-Francorchamps. I mentioned Road America in a couple weeks. Oh, boy, the National Park of Speed, 14 corners out there, 4 miles of excellent pavement, rumble strips, grass, trees, everything you want at a racetrack. Road America's got it. Going to be a fun one out there for sure.
Can't wait for it. And again, we're winding this thing down. Only 2 weekends left, or 2 races left, 4 rounds. So I think, again, like you've mentioned, Road America, not 100%, I should say not entirely not technical, but it is a little more straightforward. And then we end it with a barn burner at Daytona, which is a draft fest and a whole lot of excitement. So I can't wait to see, now that we're really into the final rounds of this season, where it goes.
All right, so Road America in a couple weeks. Next Wednesday will be the continuation of the Spec MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge from Watkins Glen International. So make sure you're tuning in to Winding Roads YouTube channel in 1 week. Tomorrow night, it'll be Scars Ferrari Challenge from Imola Friday night, we've got Washington, D.C. region action from Road Atlanta. Saturday, Outsider Racing League at the Milwaukee Mile. That's what's coming up on Sim TV. We'll see you there. Have a wonderful night.